Chapter 188. In addition to the realm of kendo and secret techniques. In addition, the only thing that can greatly improve his strength is all kinds of foreign objects. The foreign objects here mainly refer to various instruments. For example, high-level flying swords, defensive spirit armor, auxiliary magic weapons, etc. A high-grade flying sword. He has a third-grade high-grade flying sword rainbow lightsaber that he received from Yang Linyuan, the ancestor of the Yang family. The defensive spirit armor is slightly insufficient, but he also has a second-order top-grade natal spirit armor that he tailored for him. Of course, the inheritance of the second-order spirit armor of the Chun family is also the exchange of military exploits from the Qinyuan sword sect. This second-order spiritual armor inheritance cost the Chun family a total of 100,000 merits, which is almost worth 1/5 of the price of this 9 ruins Linglong pagoda. Although over the past 3 years, the Chun family has accumulated millions of merits. But to exchange these two things, it took more than 600,000 great works. It can be seen that the more precious the treasure, the more exaggerated the cost. However, this cost is for the Chun family nothing at all. In the war between the East Defense Zone and the Lianhu Island Corps Group, the Chun family earned not only military exploits, but also a large number of spirit stones, because the Chun family's pills and magic weapons have always been settled in half by combat exploits in spirit stones. That is to say, the Chun family has earned a total of over 100 million spirit stones in this military supply trade. The bulk of it is earned from pills. With the profit rate of pills, the pure profit earned by the Chun family is about 70 million spirit stones, which is only the profit from the military supply trade. Besides, there are also the industrial profits of the Chun family in Guang'an Prefecture Xianqing and Lingri Xianqing, as well as the increasingly prosperous Guanhai Xianqing, especially Guanhai Xianqing. In the past 3 years, due to Chen Daoxuan's low tax support for merchants and loose cultivators in Guanhai Xianqing, the Central Bank of Chongping has also implemented loan support policies for various potential families and loose cultivators. As a result, the commerce and trade of Guanhai Xianqing has become increasingly active. More and more families came to Guanhai Xianqing to operate their own industries. As a result, it also attracted a large number of loose cultivators. 3 years ago, according to the rough statistics of the coalition forces in the Western Defense Zone, there were about 300,000 monks gathered in the entire Western Defense Zone. 3 years later, this figure doubled to more than 600,000. Although these more than 600,000 monks are not all gathered in Guanhai Xianqing. However, the population of resident monks in Guanhai Xianqing has also exceeded 200,000, which is almost comparable to 1/3 of the Xianqing of Guang'an Prefecture. The profit generated by this immortal city is the real cornucopia of the Chun family. Of course, although the Chun family has made a lot of profits in the past 3 years, the expenses are also large. These 3 years, the Chun family did not store the earned spirit stones, but continued to issue spirit stone coins according to the same amount of spirit stones and put them into the market of Guanhai Xianqing. For example, the construction of Guanhai Xianqing. At the beginning, due to the shortage of spirit stones, after spending 50 million spirit stones, the completed area of the entire Guanhai Xianqing only accounted for 1/10 of the total area. Now that there are enough spirit stones, the Chun family will definitely continue to invest in the construction of this fairy city. Chen Daochuan has always kept Chen Daoxuan's orders in mind. A spirit stone, 1 yuan spirit stone coin is issued. Absolutely do not send more than $1 of currency. People in this life may not understand this lesson, but Chen Daoxian, who is familiar with the history of his past life, knows it all too well. The Jiaozi of the Northern Song dynasty and the treasured notes of Daming, without exception, all failed. The fundamental reason for their failure is the ideology of imperial power. To put it simply, the world is mine, and I can do whatever I like, completely disregarding the laws of the market, issuing money indiscriminately so that the currency depreciates wildly, and no one wants to use it in the end. Money itself has no value. The value of money lies in commodities. Take a simple example. 1 pound of grain is produced and 1 yuan is printed and distributed, and that 1 yuan can buy 1 pound of grain. If 5 yuan is printed and distributed, only 5 yuan can buy a pound of grain. If you print and distribute 10,000 yuan, then no amount of money will be able to buy food, because everyone is scared by you, creating a market panic, and no one dares to use your currency. Actually, With the productivity of Guanhai Xiancheng, it has been able to carry out a certain degree of additional currency issuance. After all, with the continuous expansion of the Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone, the Chun family supplies more and more medicinal pills and magic weapons in Guanhai Xiancheng. If the currency is insufficient, deflation will also occur. The same is not good for economic development. It's just that Chen Daoxian was afraid that Chen Daochuan would not be able to grasp the degree of this, so he never dared to let him overissue money. Even a small-scale deflation is better than a large-scale inflation that makes Lingshi coins waste paper. With the cultivation base and the realm of Kendo becoming more and more advanced, Chen Daoxuan's escape speed also nearly doubled. Less than half a day. Chen Daoxian returned to Shuanghu Island. Looking at the newly promoted third-order spiritual vein of the family, Chen Daoxian was full of pride. 10 million spirit stones. Once upon a time it was an astronomical sum for the Chun family, but for the Chun family now, 10 million spirit stones but nothing. When he saw that the Zhou family was an allied army of Guang'an Prefecture, they smashed 500 million spirit stones in one go, so scared that he didn't dare to speak at the time. Now it seems that, as a big family in Guang'an Prefecture, it is ridiculous that they can't even get 100 million spirit stones. You must know that if the 9 ruins Linglong Pagoda in Chan Daoxuan's hands was put up for auction at the auction house, it would probably be auctioned for a sky-high price of more than 50 million spirit stones. This price is already comparable to the average 5th-order magic weapon. In the entire Guang'an mansion, only the Zhou family is so arrogant and equipped with such expensive instruments for tempering the clan's children. Descend the light of escape. Chen Daoxian found that Uncle 13 and a group of people of the blessed generation were all waiting for him. Bought it back. Chen Xianhe looked at Chen Daoxian excitedly. Chen Daoxian stretched out his palm, and a cyan pagoda was overflowing with light in his palm. Good. Chen Xianhe was at a loss and wanted to touch this pagoda, but he didn't dare to touch it for fear of breaking it. See, Chen Daoxian personally handed the blue pagoda to his hand, and said with a smile, Uncle 13, touch it quickly, or I won't be able to put it in my hand and play with it later. Hear this. Chen Xianhe immediately took it into his hand and touched it. I have long heard that the Zhou family has a Taishu illusion that tempers the elite disciples of the clan. I didn't expect that today my Chen family will also have the opportunity to get this kind of treasure. Chen Xianhe was so excited that he didn't know what to say. Just under 20 years. The Chen family has undergone earth-shaking changes. From a family with no spiritual veins, it has become a big family with 2 third-order spiritual veins, 17 second-order spiritual veins, and 21 first-order spiritual veins. From a family with only 2 monks, old and young, it has become a large family with 1 monk in the Xianzi generation, 10 monks in the Taoist generation, and 617 monks in the Blessing generation. Not to mention that the Chun family still controls a fairy city, and even issued its own currency in this fairy city. On this point, neither of the Zhou family did it. Of course, they probably didn't think of it, or felt that doing so would be too much of a hindrance. But no matter what, among the 3 immortal cities in Guang'an Prefecture, only the immortal city of Guanhai uses a unique paper currency such as Lingshi coins. And because the Chun family has good credit, the cultivators in Guanhai Xiancheng do not reject the use of such banknotes. Even some loose cultivators and small family cultivators began to take the initiative to deposit their spiritual stones in the Chongping Central Bank in exchange for spiritual stone coins. This is undoubtedly a good phenomenon for the currency issued by the Chun family. These years, look at the changes in the family. Chen Xianhe has deeply felt that he can't point Chen Daoxian at all. Although he has been the patriarch of the Chun clan for decades, after all, it is only a crumbling small clan with only a few thousand people including the mortal population. How can it be compared with the prosperous scene of the Chun family today? What Chen Xianhe can do now is to teach the children of the blessed generation in the clan to show his last light and heat in the clan. The crowd was excited. Follow behind Chen Daoxian and watch him place the 9 ruins Linglong Pagoda. Looking at the open space in front of me that was specially vacated for the 9 ruins Linglong Tower, Chen Daoxian flew into the sky with a flash of light. He was dragging the cyan pagoda with his left hand, and the mysterious control technique on his right hand kept circulating, as if he was opening some kind of restriction on the cyan pagoda. Next moment, The Xian Pagoda seemed to be activated under the operation of Chen Daoxian. I saw Chen Daoxian throw it on the vacated flat ground. The Xian Pagoda rose sharply in the wind. From a mini tower less than 6 inches high, it has skyrocketed 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Boom! Under the control of Chen Daoxian, the Xian 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda slowly landed on the open space. There was a loud earth-shaking noise. The Chen family standing below were shocked and speechless when they saw the huge pagoda that was more than 100 feet high in front of them. You must know that tall buildings of more than 100 feet, even in their previous lives, were small well-known tall buildings. Moreover, this is not the highest form of the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda. According to the introduction in Qianyuan Jianzong's exchange of jade slips, the Linglong Pagoda of the 9 Ruins can reach a height of 900 zhang. Of course, for the current Qin family, there is absolutely no need to raise it so high. Anyway, it was something that Chen Daoxian manipulated at will. After the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda was placed, Chen Daoxian lowered his escape light, looked at the tall tower in front of him, and said with a smile, "Go, let's go in." Okay. Oh! The disciples of Fuzi life cheered. And they knew that, strictly speaking, this 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda was bought for them. The presence of this group of people from the Fu family is not simple. Counting them carefully, there are 54 people in this batch of Fuzi generation, all of which were carefully selected by Chen Daoxian from the family Fuzi cultivators in recent years. The oldest of them is Chen Fuxing, who is only 9 years old. The youngest is Chen Fuwang, who is only 5 years old this year. But without exception, they are all specially designed by Chen Daoxian, students of the missionary hall. The so-called preaching hall is a school specially established by Chen Daoxian, according to the preaching function of the Hongming Enlightenment Classic. There are only 3 courses of alchemy, and kendo for the time being. These 54 disciples of the Blessed Generation are the students of the kendo class selected by Chen Daoxian, from the more than 600 Blessed Generation members of the Chen family. It is also a clan that the Chen family cultivated as a core disciple. The conditions for entering the mission hall are quite harsh. Not only do you have to accept the strictest family loyalty education from a young age, but you also have to make an oath before entering that you will never betray your family. Whether it's weapon refining, alchemy, or students in the kendo class, this is the case. The preaching function of the Hongming Enlightenment Classic is too powerful, and Chen Daoxian has to be careful again and again. But with such a powerful function, he could not abandon it. We can only give the double insurance of thought and the oath of the Great Way to the monks of the family who accept the preaching. Chapter 189. Okay, since you are going to class, I want to disturb you. The students of ethnic studies are still waiting for me. Just as everyone was about to go to the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda, Chen Xianhe said with a smile, "Uncle 13? Go." Chen Xianhe waved his hand. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands and walked slowly towards the interior of the Blue Pagoda with 54 elites of the family's blessing generation. Chen Xianhe glanced at the people who were drifting away, smiled, used the wind control technique, and flew in the direction of the clan. Walked to the gate of Linglong Pagoda of 9 Ruins. As if sensing the master's arrival, the door of the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda opened automatically with a rumbling sound. It is said that magical tools above the 4th rank will have an additional direction of spiritual wisdom. This is probably the tool spirit of the Blue Pagoda. With their heads held high, they took the lead in approaching the Xian Pagoda, and the elite children of the blessing generation followed behind and filed in. Next second, everyone walked together to an incomparably wide space inside the tower. There are 9 floors in the 9 Ruins Linglong Pagoda, each of which can be set up with 9 levels of Taishu illusions. These 9 levels of illusions can be set up according to the user's own needs. Generally speaking, big families and sects will choose several kinds of grinding illusions. For example, the illusion that sharpens the disciple's state of mind, the illusion that enhances the disciple's combat experience, and the illusion that enhances the small-scale cooperation of the disciples and large-scale collective battles. The first time Chen Daoxian saw the Zhou family cultivator fight against the Mare people, thousands of the Zhou family cultivators gathered together and released the sword formation, which defeated the beast controlled by the Mare people in a single encounter. It can be said to be powerful to the extreme. In detail, not every disciple of the Zhou family has a very high cultivation level, and most of them are even cultivators in the late stage of qi refining. But this group of Zhou family cultivators, who were nearly 10 times less than the mercenary tribe, defeated the mercenary tribe 10 times as many as them and the beasts that were more numerous. It's not tough. Compared with those scattered cultivators, the two are not at the same level. Chen Daoxian estimated that even if the number of loose cultivators and Zhou cultivators were the same, their cultivation bases would be equal. If the two sides fought against each other on a large scale, it was estimated that the scattered cultivators would not be able to last a round in the hands of the Zhou family cultivators, and they would be defeated by the Zhou family cultivators, and then it would be considered a one-sided massacre. This is the difference between trained and untrained. True. The first determinant of a cultivator's strength is cultivation, but when everyone's cultivation has not opened a huge gap, other factors are also very important. This includes combat experience and the cooperation between monks. The reason why the coalition forces in the Western Defense Area are weak is not only because the number of coalition forces in the Western Defense Area is the smallest, but also because the coalition forces in the Western Defense Area are completely composed of scattered cultivators. These loose cultivators seldom undergo formal militarization training, and with the loss of Zenangwan, very few of them have even been on the front lines. Let me ask, how much combat power can an army composed of such a group of monks have? Maybe alone they can make a difference. If it is a large-scale battle, a well-trained army of monks can defeat them in a single encounter. Owner. As soon as he stepped into the first floor of the pagoda, a childlike voice sounded in the empty first floor. Are you the tower spirit of the Linglong Tower of the Nine Ruins? Yes, master. The young child's voice replied again. After pondering for a moment, Chen Daoxian communicated with his consciousness. As far as I know, you should have the ability to set up illusions, but I don't know how to set them up. The Nine Ruins Linglong Pagoda comes with 9 kinds of illusions, and the illusions on each floor are different. If the master wants to add or delete certain things in the environment, he can communicate with me directly. However, the setting of the illusion still needs to consider the issue of authenticity. If the things added by the master are too different from the original content of the illusion, it will cause the illusion to be too illusory and lose its sense of reality. Therefore, the owner needs to think about what to add or subtract. What is the illusion on the first floor? Master, please see. The words just finished. The scene in front of everyone suddenly changed. In Chen Daoxuan's sea of knowledge, the golden scriptures shook slightly. He suddenly realized that if he wanted, he could get rid of the illusion in front of him at any time. But other cultivators of the blessing generation did not have this ability. Watching the scene in front of them suddenly changed from the quiet and peaceful environment in the pagoda to the foot of the city gate with a sluggish atmosphere. The older monks of the Fuzi generation were fine, while the younger monks were directly stunned by the sight in front of them. Kill! Before everyone came back to their senses, a scream of killing sounded behind everyone. I saw a group of cultivators from the enemy army of the Izumo Kingdom, wearing spirit armor, with a number of about 100, flying towards the crowd. Before anyone arrived, a sword formation composed of 100 flying swords rushed towards the crowd. What? It wasn't just anyone who exclaimed, and immediately fell to the ground in fright. Chun Fuxing was the eldest, but in the face of this hopeless scene, his mouth was dry, and his whole body was trembling unconsciously. 100 cultivators in the late stage of qi refining, wearing first-order high-grade spirit armor, and experienced in battle formations, they knew how to form formations. Such an opponent. Not to mention them, even Chen Daoxian, who was in the qi refining period, had to run away immediately. Although Chun Fuxing was extremely frightened, he patted the storage bag around his waist, and the spirit armor quickly covered his entire body. Nearly 4 years. Under Chen Daoxuan's intensive care, Chun Fuxing's cultivation base has been promoted to the 8th level of qi refining. This speed can be said to be the first of its kind for all the cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. But thinking of the various resources smashed on him, let alone the big clan in Guang'an Prefecture would not do this. Even the Qianyuan sword sect couldn't be so arrogant and invested so much in a mere qi refining cultivator. Unless this qi refining cultivator is a direct descendant of a high-level Qianyuan sword sect. It is almost the same for the high level to pay for it out of their own pockets. The more powerful it is, the more formalized and institutionalized it is to train disciples. It is impossible to play like the Chun family. Besides, the foundation building in the early years and the foundation building in the later years did not affect the monks that much. There are many cultivators who invested resources wildly in the early stage, and their cultivation bases improved rapidly. After the foundation was established, it was limited by talent and understanding, and after the slow progress of the cultivation so that the gap was too large, there were countless examples. Therefore, sometimes it is not a good thing to improve the cultivation base too fast during the qi refining period, but it is easy for the cultivator to lose himself. To a certain extent, the Chun family's training mode for the Kendo class monks in the preaching hall is indeed a kind of encouragement. However, the number of these monks of the blessing generation is not large, and Chan Daoxian is always watching over them to guide their mood. For the time being, there is no such problem. More importantly, with the preaching function, the Kendo realm of these cultivators of the blessing generation, such as Chen Fusheng, has already touched the threshold of sword intent. Now I am comprehending the spell Dao pattern in various spells, and I want to integrate Dao into the sword. Once successful, he will become the Chun family's second qi refining period to realize the existence of sword intent, and he is much younger than Chan Daoxian. Although the other monks of the Fu character generation did not receive preaching for as long as Chen Fusheng did, they almost all practiced one or several first-order sword arts to the perfect state. The strength far exceeds that of the qi refining cultivators of the same rank. In addition, each of them is equipped with the best first-order high-grade flying swords, the spirit armor of life, and the white lotus of good fortune unique to the Chan family. As for foreign objects such as spiritual talismans, they are not lacking. Therefore, in terms of real strength, the oldest of them is no more than 9 years old, and the youngest is no more than 5 years old. Compared with the strength of the 100 enemy monks of the Izumo country in front of him, it is much stronger. But in terms of experience against the enemy, and more importantly, the state of mind against the enemy, they are still far behind. Except for Chan Fusheng, all the monks of the blessing generation present were deterred by the murderous aura of this group of monks from Izumo. Chan Daoxian stared coldly at the scene in front of him. He knew that this was a hurdle that the group of monks of the blessing generation had to go through. This group of people, there will be no accident in the future. All of them will enter the military department of the Chen family in the future, which is the military department of the Chen family as envisaged by Chan Daoxian. It is the military guarantee to guard the Chun family. Their strength may not be the strongest, but they must not be weak, let alone fear the enemy. Otherwise, no matter how high your cultivation base is, no matter how strong your strength is, you will still be a waste, just like Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family. Kill! Chen Fusheng's tender voice broke the silence. A flying sword glowing with blue light erupted with a sword light up to 9 feet long, and charged towards the enemy. The sword formation of the Izumo cultivator was soon torn apart by Chen Fusheng's flying sword and killed the enemy. However, although Chen Fusheng was strong, the sword formation on the opposite side was made by 100 cultivators after all. As soon as Jianguang tore a gap, it was blocked by the follow-up flying swords. Chen Fusheng's flying sword suddenly fell into a quagmire. With one enemy and 100 cultivators who are proficient in sword formation coordination, even with Chen Fusheng's cultivation level far exceeding the opponent's, it would be a bit tricky. How to fight this? At this time, the other monks of the blessing generation finally came to their senses. They all took out flying swords and attacked the monks of Izumo. There are more than 50 monks of the blessing generation, and their Kendo level far exceeds that of the monks of the same level. The power of each person's flying sword is at least twice as strong as that of the monks of the same level. With the addition of these 50 flying swords, the sword formation of 100 Izumo monks was torn to shreds in an instant. Next, it's a one-sided slaughter. Less than half a cup of tea before and after. After the last Izumo cultivator was beheaded on the spot by a cultivator of the Fuzi generation, everyone withdrew from the illusion. Hoo-hoo! Ha-ha, win-win! They are not as strong as they appear in their aura. The power of each flying sword is so weak. Yes, it scared me to death at first. This group of cultivators of the blessing generation were all overjoyed, but Chan Daoxuan's face was already ashen. Call! He breathed a long sigh of relief and forcibly suppressed the swearing words from his mouth. Think carefully. This is the first time the cultivator of the lucky generation has participated in the battle. Isn't it normal to have such a behavior? He thought that the first time he participated in the battle was when he cooperated with a group of loose cultivators to kill a first-order blood-spotted sea snake. Wasn't he also excited at that time? Think of this. Chen Daoxuan's mentality gradually calmed down. Chapter 190. Everyone walked out of the Nine Ruins Linglong Pagoda. Seemingly noticing Chen Daoxuan's unkind expression, the cultivators of the blessed generation all restrained their complacent expressions. Sudden, Chen Daoxian paused. Seeing this, everyone stopped and looked up at Chen Daoxian. Fusheng, young patriarch. Chen Fusheng stepped forward and bowed his hands. From tomorrow onwards, you will bring the cultivators of the Kendo class to the Nine Ruins Linglong Pagoda for trials every day. Starting from the first floor, you will gradually increase the difficulty of the illusion of trial. Yes, young patriarch. Chen Fusheng understood that the young patriarch must be dissatisfied with their performance just now. This made Chen Fusheng blame himself. All along, the person he admired the most in his heart was the young patriarch in front of him. From a young age, he grew up listening to Chen Daoxuan's story, and then entered the clan, and was selected by the young clan chief to join the Kendo class of the preaching hall. Chen Fusheng knew that this Kendo class was the prototype of the Chen family's military department in the future. This group of monks of the blessing character generation shoulders the heavy responsibility of defending the Chen clan. Every member of the family has great expectations of them. Thinking of the ordinary clansmen and unqualified monks who worked hard in the industrial area, Chen Fusheng felt extraordinarily guilty. How can their performance today be worthy of the Chen clan who worked so hard in the Feijian factory and the medicine pill factory? How to be worthy of the daily teaching of the young patriarch? Thinking of this, Chen Fusheng swore in his heart. You must pass the illusion test of the Nine Ruins Linglong Pagoda as soon as possible, and at the same time, you must comprehend the sword intent as soon as possible and become a true sword cultivator. He knew that with his own cultivation, he could only truly become the backbone of the Chen family by breaking through the foundation building stage as soon as possible and becoming a sword cultivator. This can be seen by looking at the gap between the young patriarch and the ordinary foundation cultivator. Just when Chen Daoxian was in a bad mood, Chen Daochu sent him a piece of good news that lifted his spirits. Chongping Institute of Magical Instruments. When Chen Daoxian found Chen Daochu, he found that he was discussing something with a group of monks of the blessing generation. In front of them, a brand new melting furnace and a centrifugal wall breaker with a greatly changed appearance were located in the laboratory. I looked at these two strange instruments with great interest. Chen Daoxian coughed lightly, interrupting everyone's debate. Young patriarch. Chen Daochu turned around and saw Chen Daoxian, with a look of joy in his eyes. He stepped forward in 3 or 2 steps and bowed to Chen Daoxian. When the other monks of the blessing generation saw Chen Daoxian, they all bowed their hands and said, I have seen the young patriarch. Don't be too polite. Chen Daoxian waved his hand, then pointed to the 2 instruments in the laboratory, and said, This is your improved rolling furnace and centrifugal wall breaker? Right. Chen Daochu nodded heavily. Young patriarch, look. He pointed to one end of the rolling stove, and saw a glue-packed transparent line connecting one end of the rolling stove, and this rolling stove had no spirit stones. See this? Chen Daoxian was overjoyed and said excitedly, You succeeded? Fortunately not humiliated. Chen Daochu bowed his hands. Unexpectedly, in more than 3 years, Chen Daochu not only completed the transformation of the new melting furnace and centrifugal wall breaker, but also integrated the spiritual net that Chen Daoxian had not finished. At that time, Chen Daoxian planned to use the spirit thread refined from spirit stone powder to transport spirit energy, instead of spirit stone to power these 2 special instruments. The result has been stuck on the spiritual pressure problem. Later, Chen Daoxian encountered more and more things, so he put this matter in the back of his mind. However, with the continuous expansion of the Shuanghu Island industrial zone, the consumption of spirit stones is increasing. In the past, there were only less than 10 rolling furnaces, and the annual consumption of spiritual stones was naturally not that much. But now, there are hundreds of rolling furnaces and centrifugal wall breakers. The Phagian factory and the pharmaceutical factory have also been expanded several times, and the scale is no longer comparable to the original. This is just 3 years of development. Later, with the increasing number of monks of the Blessing generation and the explosive growth of the monks of the Zizi generation, the scale of the Shuanghu Island industrial zone will also expand at the same rate. Because all along it has never been machines, but the number of cultivators from the Chun family, that has limited the expansion of the Shuanghu Island industrial zone. To know, when the mortals of the same age as the Fu character grow up, the number of clansmen who give birth to the Zhe character will be 10 times or even dozens of times that of the Fu character. By then, the cultivators of the Chun family will not be hundreds or thousands, but tens of thousands or even tens of thousands. It can be imagined to what extent the scale of the Shuanghu Island industrial zone has to be expanded. Therefore, the power problem is already an imminent problem. Using spiritual stones as power, I am afraid that several third-order spiritual veins can be burned in a year. No matter how wealthy the Chun family was, they would still feel the pain. Young Patriarch, look, this is the spiritual pressure device we invented. Chun Daochu pointed to a black box-shaped magic weapon and said, "This is a small spiritual pressure device that we use for experiments. When we build the spiritual line network covering the Shuanghu Island industrial zone, we need to build a giant spiritual pressure device that is at least 100 times larger than this one." Hearing this, Chun Daoxian nodded and said, "How did you solve the spiritual pressure problem?" Formation. Having said that, Chun Daochu handed over a jade slip and said, "It's a bit troublesome to explain. The young patriarch should look at our technical data. Now that Chun Daochu uses the new term of Chun Daoxian, it is very natural." Chun Daoxian took the jade slip in Chun Daochu's hand and sank his consciousness into it. A full cup of tea. Chun Daoxian just withdrew from his consciousness. He probably understood the working principle of this spiritual pressure device. In simple terms, this spiritual pressure device uses the formation method to create a high-intensity spiritual pressure on a section of the spiritual line, forcing the spiritual energy to flow in the spiritual line. The other end of the spiritual pressure device can be connected to the spiritual lake of the third-order spiritual meridian, converting the spiritual liquid in the spiritual lake into aura, and instilling it into the spiritual line. In this way, it can drive the operation of the entire spiritual line network. The power source of Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone has also changed from Lingshi to the third-order spiritual vein of the Chan family. Seeing this, Chun Daoxian couldn't help but praise Chun Daochu's fantastic idea. Really, no matter which world people are, there is no lack of innovative spirit. What they lack is often the guidance in the process of growth. Chun Daochu has been influenced by Chun Daoxian since he was a child, and his natural thinking is completely different from people in this world, and is closer to the people of Chun Daoxuan's previous life. Chun Daoxuan's positioning of Chun Daochu is also very clear. A talent researching magical instruments. Because when it comes to Lingzhen, although Chun Daochu is not bad, he does not have many advantages compared with Tianling and Cultivator. The most important thing is that Chun Daochu's kendo talent and fighting talent are not strong, not suitable for taking the road of fighting talents. This can be seen from the fact that he has been in contact with the wind-chasing sword art for several years, until he is about to build a foundation, and he has not been able to cultivate this sword art to the realm of mastery. Chun Daochu was not very talented in kendo and spells. On the contrary, Chun Daoxian, who has been scolded by Chun Daoxian for his innate talent for refining, is the most talented among all the cultivators in the Chun family except Chun Daoxian. In less than 10 years, he is now a second-order high-grade artifact refiner. At least 3 years, as many as 5 years, Chun Daochu will have the opportunity to be promoted to the level of the third-order refiner. This kind of refining talent, even if it is placed in the Qianyuan sword sect, is a unique existence. Of course, the premise is that there is the blessing of preaching Chun Daoxian. Otherwise, he can only be regarded as an artifact refining genius at best, and he is far from being the best in the world. Seeing the Reiki network thing finally came to an end, Chun Daoxian was overjoyed and said, "Is there enough spirit stone powder?" "Don't worry, young patriarch, whether it's the spiritual veins cultivated by my Chun family, or the third-order spiritual veins in Guanhai Xiancheng, the spiritual stones that have exhausted the spiritual energy, all of them have been stored by us." Hearing this, Chun Daoxian nodded. "Although there is enough spirit stone powder now, we have to plan ahead. After thinking for a while, forget it, I will let Dao Lin take charge of this matter, and let him go to Guang'an Mansion Xianqing and Linghui Xianqing to buy spirit stones that have exhausted aura so you don't have to worry about it. Your task now is to replace all the Rongling furnaces and centrifugal wall breakers in the Shuanghu Island industrial zone for my Chan family. In addition to building the aura network, the task is very heavy. After speaking, he glanced at everyone and said, "Can you do it with less than 30 of you? Hear this." Chan Daochu looked bitter and said, "There are hundreds of magical instruments that can be replaced in the two factories. In addition to the installation of the spiritual energy network, I am afraid that there is really not enough manpower." Chen Daoxian nodded understandingly and said, "Well, I'll stay here to help you during this time, and let's do this together. The Reiki network is about the foundation of Qin's industry." Chen Daoxian had to be taken seriously, and there really aren't many suitable people right now. Although there are more than 600 members of the Fuzi generation now, more than 200 are still taking classes in the clan, and 54 full-time Fuzi monks and more than 20 Fuzi monks from the Institute of Magical Instruments are excluded. There are only more than 300 monks of the Blessing generation who participated in the production in the two factories. These people support most of the Chun family's economic resources. Chen Daoxian is not easy to move. He had no choice but to roll up his sleeves as the young patriarch and go on it himself. Anyway, he has been used to doing this kind of thing himself over the years. In the beginning, it was only by relying on his hands-on first-line production in the magic tool factory that he accumulated the first original capital of the Chun family, and now the third largest family in Guang'an Prefecture. The next days, the Shuanghu Island industrial zone has entered into a fiery reconstruction. This reconstruction may not substantially improve industrial production capacity, but it solves the problem of industrial power. It's like switching from battery power to grid power. It not only further saves costs, but also lays a solid foundation for future industrial expansion. Just when Shuanghu Island was undergoing Reiki network transformation, there was a new change in the corpse refining grounds on Lianhua Island, which was far away 100,000 miles away. In the fourth order Yin, in a terrifying hall with a strong Yin evil spirit, a young monk suddenly sat up from the cold ground. "Jejia, big brother, he's awake." Chapter 191. I heard what my brother Sun Meng said. Sun Fu turned his head, and his dark golden eyes stared at the chi refining cultivator in front of him, his eyes cold and penetrating. In the eyes of young chi cultivators, the scene in front of me was like hell. The hall that used to be full of immortality in the Zhao family has long since become eerie. Outside the hall, the faint mass of corpses made the hands and feet of this young chi refining cultivator go weak. "Boy, in order to bring you back alive, I have damaged a corpse servant of the Z mansion. Tell me, how should this account be calculated?" Sun Mang approached the chi refining cultivator little by little, and a disgusting corpse stench spewed out of his mouth. The young chi refining cultivator only took a sip before feeling dizzy and wobbly. "It's really fragile." Sun Mang frowned. "Big brother." Sun Fu nodded. "Jia." With Sun Fu's approval, Sun Mang smiled cruelly, his pitch-black fingernails stroked lightly, stirring the air with a chi-chi sound. "What? If you don't speak, are you dumb?" As he said that, he put away the corpse poison on his nails, and gently scratched the other's skin, and the black blood seeped out instantly. "What?" The young chi cultivator burst out with a whimper, but he remained firm and did not speak. "See this scene." Sun Mang grabbed his legs cruelly, and then tore them apart a little bit with force. "This feeling is really comfortable, The young cultivator's miserable howl got smaller and smaller, until at the end, there was no breath at all. Tearing a cultivator in half alive, Sun Mang lifted half of his body and dragged him to another middle-aged cultivator lying on the ground. He said gloomily, "Since you are awake, stop pretending. You." The middle-aged cultivator lying on the ground abruptly sat up, and while pointing at the other side, he kept retreating, trembling all over. "Brother, this is willing to speak, it's really boring." With that said, Sun Mang threw half of the young cultivator who had just killed, directly beside the cultivator who had just woken up, and made him scream. "With this courage you dare to attack us?" Sun Mang sneered. The weak will always be the weak, even if they embark on the path of cultivation. In the face of Sun Mang's ridicule, the middle-aged cultivator, who had been so frightened, didn't care at all, just lowered his head and trembled. But seeing the half-body of his companion on the ground, and the pool of blood and internal organs flowing out, his whole body trembled even more. Ask you a question, as long as you are willing to answer, I will let you go half an hour. The middle-aged cultivator gathered his courage and said with a trembling voice, how do I know what you said? Is it true or false? You can only choose to believe or die. Sun Mang rubbed his sharp nails as black as ink and said. The middle-aged monk struggled violently in his heart. After a long time he nodded. I ask you, where did you Guang'an house cultivators get the logistical medicine pill supply? Haven't the Zhao family already died? Could it be the medicine pill provided to you by other prefectures? Hear this. The middle-aged monk lowered his head, unwilling to answer. What? The next second one of his legs was torn off alive and he screamed in pain. Uninterested. Sun Mang shook his head, wanting to kill him directly. But the middle-aged cultivator's strong desire to survive exploded. He collapsed on the ground and shouted loudly, I said, don't kill me. Don't kill me. Sun Mang's outstretched claws stopped. Speak. It's the Chun family on Shuanghu Island, and most of the medicinal pills on our front line are provided by the Chun family. Chun family. Sun Mang was a little confused, so he had never heard of the name of the Chun family in Guang'an Prefecture before his death. You are lying to me. I didn't lie to you. Really, the Chun family is a new big family in Guang'an Prefecture. By the way, their family also gave birth to a young swordsman named Chan Daoxian. Once the psychological defense line of the middle-aged monk was opened, he immediately shook out all the words. Is it this person? On the side, Sun Fu brought a bronze-colored round mirror, and inside it appeared a young monk in a white Taoist robe. Yes, it's him. The middle-aged monk endured the pain. Brother, it's him. When Sun Mang learned that the Chun family was actually the family of Chan Daoxian who played him last time, the old and new hatreds were added together, and the whole person broke out uncontrollably. It's the little last time. Done. A palm waved towards the middle-aged monk. Before the middle-aged monk could beg for mercy, he was photographed into a mass of flesh and blood. Sticking out his scarlet tongue and licking the bloodstains on his palm, Sun Mang said slowly, Brother, what should we do now? Sun Fu's dark golden eyes shrank and he said gloomily, Zhou Mubai is besieging us now, but he has left a gap just so that we can fight with the Yi family. Since that's the case, I will fulfill his wish. Brother, this. Sun Fu took out an amber jade bottle, which contained a small half bottle of golden blood, and muttered, Our immortal blood, not much. Heard. Sun Mang was completely silent. After a long while, he raised his head and said firmly, Brother, what do you say? What do I do? Brothers. Sun Fu patted Sun Mang on the shoulder and said, More than a whole month. With the efforts of more than 20 monks of the Blessing generation, as well as Chan Daoxian and Chan Daochu, Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone has a new look. The biggest change is the Lingxian network that spreads across the two large factories. If you look closely, you will find that the other end of the spiritual line network extends all the way to the spiritual lake of the third-order spiritual veins on Shuanghu Island. In Linghu, a super-large spiritual pressure device is slowly operating, delivering spiritual energy to various industrial equipment in the entire Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone. Standing in the sky, Chan Daoxian looked down at the spiritual line network under his feet, and his heart was full of excitement. With the efforts of him and the Chun family, Shuanghu Island is changing little by little, and the industrial flower of Xiaoxianji is blooming little by little on this small island. Energy is the foundation of industry. The energy Chan Daoxian chose for this industry is the seemingly inexhaustible spiritual energy. After solving the problem of energy and power, the next thing to do is to innovate technology, continue to improve productivity, and expand production capacity, as well as inventing machines for the industrialized production of high-level magical implements and high-level elixir. This requires the Institute of Magical Instruments to innovate and create on the basis of existing instruments. Compared with low-level instruments and medicinal herbs, high-level magic tools and medicinal herbs are much more difficult to refine. and it is far less easy to continue to rely on semi-manual and semi-machined industrial production. Chen Daoxian knew this in his heart. But this problem, he is no longer ready to solve it by himself. After all, he has already planted the seeds of industry, and he has even combined the industrial thinking of the previous life and the knowledge of tool refining in this life into a book dedicated to teaching the disciples of the Chen family. He also ordered Chen Daochu to set up the Institute of Magical Instruments. After doing so much work, if they depended on him for everything, then the Chen family would be too useless. In the past, it could be said that the children of the Chen family were not talented enough, but now they have the blessing of the preaching function of the Hongming enlightenment of Taoism. There is no need for Chen Daoxian to bother anymore. At this time, the Chen family has been given wings to take off by Chen Daoxian. As long as it is given enough time, the energy it bursts will definitely shock the world. Young patriarch, it's really spectacular. Yes, Chen Daoxian nodded with a smile, just about to say something. Suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of Sequoia Island. What's up? Chen Daochu wondered. It's nothing, I'm going out, you guys keep busy. Okay. After greeting, Chen Daoxian flew directly towards the Fourth Order Mountain Protection Formation. As the movement of the Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone became more and more loud, Chen Daoxian wanted to protect the secrets of the industrial zone on the island. The entire Shuanghu Island has long been shrouded in a Fourth Order Mountain Protection Formation and a Third Order maze. Seen from the outside, everything on Shuanghu Island is shrouded in a vast white fog, and if you don't enter it, you can't see any reality at all. Out of the big line, Chen Daoxian frowned when he saw Lei Zhan, who was wearing spirit armor and standing with his hands in front of him. General Lei, what happened? Lord. Lei Zhan bowed his hands. The Guang'an Prefecture Allied Forces headquarters sent a message asking you to go to a battle meeting. Have a battle meeting? Chen Daoxian frowned. Are there any new changes in the front line of the Eastern Defense Zone? He remembered that the last time he was invited to a battle meeting, it was Zhou Mubai who encountered difficulties on the front line. The medicinal pills were consumed wildly, and the logistics could not keep up, so he had to ask for help from the rear. But over the past 3 years, the coalition forces in the East Defense Zone have been pressing the Lianhua Island Corps group to fight, and there is no problem of asking for help. In addition, the production capacity of the Chen family's medicinal herbs has been increasing, and the supply of medicinal herbs on the front line has even been saturated. The Chen family had to convert part of their production capacity into the production of qi gathering pills, a first-order medicinal pill that assisted cultivation. In recent years, in order to support the front line, many monks have delayed their own cultivation. There is a huge demand for medicinal herbs to assist cultivation in the rear. The Chen family's medicinal pills are very popular. Now, as far as the medicinal pill market in Guang'an Prefecture is concerned, the Chen family has completely surpassed the Zhou family and become the first medicinal family. Currently, Qinjie Lingdan produced nearly 1 million pills, covering more than 90% of the first-order pill market in the 3 immortal cities. If it weren't for the Chen family's limited ability to produce second-order elixir, it might have completely squeezed the market share of the Zhou family's elixir. For this scene, while the Zhou family felt helpless, there was no good way to do it. After all, the Chen family already has a foundation, and it is no longer a small family. Even if his Zhou family wanted to strike, he couldn't think of a good way for a while. Besides, the policy formulated by the Zhou family before was to befriend the Chen family. If we strike again at this time, wouldn't all the previous investment of the Zhou family be wasted? Chen Daoxian is also very knowledgeable. After occupying the first-order medicinal pill market, the second-order medicinal pill market has not been touched again. He knew that in Guang'an Prefecture, it was best not to push the Zhou family too quickly. Otherwise, it's not a good thing. At least before he was promoted to the Z Mansion, or before the cultivators of the Fuzi generation grew up, it was inconvenient to force the Zhou family too much. Say it again. Wan Xinghai's medicine pill market is so vast, why should he be confined to one place? The medicine pill market in Songzhou Xiancheng, the medicine market in the neighboring city, the medicine market in Jingzhou and Taizhou, etc. Thoughts flipping. Half a day has passed. Chen Daoxian looked at the Zhou family station in front of him and quickly lowered his escape. just entered the hall of the Allied Forces headquarters in Guang'an Prefecture. Chen Daoxian met a good friend whom he hadn't seen in years. Chapter 192. The main hall of the Allied Forces headquarters in Guang'an Prefecture. What? After listening to Zhou Mubai's narration, everyone was shocked. Yang Linyuan frowned and said, "Didn't the Lianhua Island Corps Group be suppressed by the coalition forces in the East Defense Zone? Why did it suddenly break out?" Hearing this, Zhou Mubai said solemnly, "I guessed right before. The Corps Group of Lotus Island really has the ability to quickly promote the foundation building zombies to the Zifu. The ability to quickly promote Zifu zombies? Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Brother Zhou, Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. What do you mean the corpse of Lotus Island has been fighting against my Guang'an mansion for so long as a fake, but it is actually to delay time and create purple mansion-level zombies? Probably, Zhou Mubai paused. It's not necessarily fake to attack my Guang'an mansion. It can only be said that our Guang'an mansion is indeed not their main target. Their target has always been Cangzhou Xiancheng. Now the islands along the way from Lianhua Island to Cangzhou Xiancheng are almost completely destroyed within a month, and the corpse tide is approaching Cangzhou Xiancheng. So, doesn't it mean that all the islands in Cangzhou Xiancheng have fallen? Zhou Mingyan couldn't help but said. You can say that. Zhou Mubai nodded heavily. It's too fast. Yang Linyuan and Chen Daoxian frowned upon hearing this. Not long ago, the East Defense area of Guang'an Mansion was still fighting against the opponent, but the situation turned sharply in a blink of an eye, and no one could accept it. But, why did the other party choose Cangzhou Xiancheng? Zhang Su, the red-haired cultivator who had not spoken, wondered. It's the population. Chen Daoxian's eyes were deep. The population of Cangzhou Xiancheng is more than 10 times the total population of my Guang'an prefecture, and the total is as many as billions. Once such a population is transformed into zombies, everyone shuddered when they heard the words. Although the strength of a single zombie is not worth mentioning, a monk in the early stage of qi refining can easily strangle with a flying sword. Available in the billions. Besides, there are also levels of evil things like zombies. The strength of the low-level zombies is not comparable to that of the qi refining monks, but the high-level zombies are even comparable to those of the Zifu monks. That is to say, the zombies have fewer means. Fighting alone is not the opponent of the Zifu cultivator, but what about 2 and 3? It is clear. The corpse group of Lotus Island has the means to quickly upgrade the level of zombies. Although everyone can't imagine what kind of treasure it is, it can make a nefarious thing like a zombie quickly advance. It stands to reason that although the promotion of zombies is far easier than that of monks, it is not so easy. In just a few years, a batch of cultivator corpses with at most the foundation building level were refined into Zifu-level corpse servants. This is obviously counterintuitive. If the cultivation of sinister things was really that simple, then the world of immortal cultivation would have been in chaos and demons would have been rampant. Actually, the current world of immortality, whether it's monsters, evil spirits, or demons, they're all things that don't enter the mainstream. Needless to say, the monsters naturally have been reduced to a situation of lingering since the ancient times when they failed to compete with the human race for of the heaven and this world. As for the evil spirits and demon cultivators, their biggest enemies are not cultivators but calamities. Once the evil spirits and demon cultivators reach the golden elixir realm of human cultivators, they will encounter thunder tribulations that are 10 times, or even 100 times more terrifying than that of human cultivators. Under the attack of this thunder tribulation, no matter what kind of terrifying evil creature or demon cultivator you are, all will be turned into ashes. There is no chance of a robbery at all. Even if there is a 1 in trillion chance of successfully transcending the calamity, it will face the joint strangulation of the human race cultivators. Human cultivators are very aware of the dangers of high-level evil spirits and demon cultivators. Killing these things is the consensus of almost all ethnic monks. After all, this kind of thing is essentially 2 species that cannot coexist with human monks. The evil spirits and demons require the cultivation of the evil spirit of the Yin Meridian, while the monks of the human race need spiritual energy. How can the 2 coexist? Not to mention that many magic cultivators rely on massacres of mortals. collecting mortals' resentment and blood evil spirits to speed up their cultivation and sacrificing magic tools. This perverted path of cultivation is destined to be rejected by all monks. Hear Zhoumubai's words. For a time, everyone felt extremely heavy. The East Defense Zone blocked Lotus Island, but the opponent actually went straight to Cangzhou Xiancheng, and all the way was like breaking the enemy. This Yi family is too rubbish. Don't they know how to build a defense line? Zhou Mingyan couldn't help cursing. Obviously, the battle between the Lianhua Island Corpse Group and us was shown to all the monks in Cangzhou Xiancheng, in order to show the Corpse Group's vulnerable image. Otherwise, Cangzhou Xiancheng would not be so defenseless. Zhoumu said solemnly. Not to mention the Yi family, even the cultivators in their East Defense Zone, after years of fighting, could not help but start to despise the corpses on Lotus Island. After all, they strangled millions of corpses on the opposite side. But what I didn't expect was that these were played by the Corpse Group for them. This moment, everyone felt extremely troubled. But everyone knows that in any case, Cangzhou Xiancheng cannot fall. Once Cangzhou Xiancheng is broken, there will be no line of defense in the entire Cangzhou Xiancheng that can resist the corpse. At that time, the mortals in the entire Cangzhou Xiancheng will be transformed into zombies, and then sweep the entire Cangzhou. Not to mention the mere Guang'an prefecture, the 14 other Cangzhou prefectures combined would not be able to withstand this disaster. Heard. Yang Linyuan couldn't help but said. It's all this time hasn't Qianyuan Jianzong made a move? What are they waiting for? For the sake of a mere genius, all the mortals in Cangzhou must be sacrificed? Zhou Mingho shook his head solemnly. God Zhu is not eliminated. Even if this corpse tide is suppressed, it will not make any sense. Zhou Mingho said solemnly, if he can create a Cangzhou corpse once, he can create a Jingzhou corpse and even Taizhou corpse. Chen Daoxian was also in a heavy mood at the moment. He knew that Zhou Mingho was right. If the gods do not get rid of the real people, the corpses will never be destroyed. This is the real bane. What's more, Chen Daoxian always felt that there was something behind the Cangzhou corpse chaos. For some reason, he suddenly thought of the words Xiaohong said before his death, you all die. What kind of disaster let him say that you are all going to die? Take 1,000 steps back. Even if Cangzhou fell collectively, they, the Cangzhou clan, would slap their butts and run to other states, and the corpse group could overturn the entire Wangxinghai. Totally overthinking. You must know that so far, only the cultivators of Guang'an House have fought against the corpse group on Lotus Island. Other Cangzhou prefectures did not participate. If it weren't for the sudden turn of events this time, the monks in other houses would not necessarily know that such a big mess had happened in Cangzhou. Just like the monks in Guang'an Mansion didn't know what happened in the Jinan Mansion next door. This world is far wider than the previous life. The delivery of the message also lags behind the previous life. It is not a major event that shakes Cangzhou, and ordinary monks rarely pay attention to foreign affairs. But it's different now. Once Cangzhou Xiancheng is besieged, all the palaces in Cangzhou will receive this news. If nothing else, someone will soon contact the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. This person is either a cultivator of the Yi family, or a cultivator of a big family from another house. This combat meeting was not so much a meeting. It is better to say that everyone has reached a consensus again to help Cangzhou Xiancheng. Although from the bottom of their hearts, everyone didn't want to help Cangzhou Xiancheng, and they wished that the Yi family would die. But I don't want the dead Yi family to turn into zombies and attack them again. Because compared to the Yi family, those corpses are the most terrifying things. They are not afraid, they will not compromise, they will only fight with the monks. This is a war with no way out. Since everyone agrees to help Cangzhou Xiancheng, then we will launch an alliance to unite the entire Cangzhou cultivator. Zhou Mingho suddenly stood up. Hearing this, everyone nodded, stood up and said, subordinates obey. Cangzhou Xiancheng has a population of hundreds of millions, and is the largest Xiancheng in the entire Cangzhou. Fortunately, it is also the home of the Yi family. With the strength of the Yi family, this immortal city will not fall easily. Anyway, the Yi family also has Yi Wudao, the Jindan cultivator, and more than a dozen cultivators from the Purple House. There is also a fifth-order formation that guards the entire immortal city. Even though the Yi family couldn't compare to the corpse group in terms of battle strength of the Purple Mansion, They could completely stand guard and wait for the rescue of other provinces. After the meeting, before waiting for Zhou Mingho to contact other provinces, someone kept contacting the Zhou family. As expected by Chen Daoxian, among these people, there are people from the Yi family, as well as people from other great clans in various prefectures. Everyone has only one goal: suppress the Cangzhou corpse chaos. At this moment, all the monks in the entire Cangzhou knew that Cangzhou Xianqing must not be allowed to fall. As for Zhou Mobai's previous thought of revenge against the Yi family, he had also forgotten about it before the safety of the entire Guang'an mansion and Cangzhou. Cangzhou's safety is more important than everything else. All grudges can and must be put aside temporarily. Chen Daoxian is the same. He knows better than anyone the simple truth that An has finished eggs under the nest. Since the Chen family is rooted in Guang'an Prefecture and Cangzhou, the safety of Cangzhou is the safety of the Chen family. As for fleeing, not to mention whether Qianyuan Jianzong will be held accountable. Even if Chen Daoxian can escape with his clan, there is no state capital in the entire Wangxinghai that is willing to take in this kind of abandoned soil and escape as a coward. Twin Lakes Island. Chen Daoxian's escape light quickly landed. Back to a peaceful family land. Chen Daoxian walked silently in the direction of the clan. Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. Chen Daoxian silently glanced at the blue stone, several bright red stone carvings, and walked into the campus with his legs raised. In the current clan, compared with 3 years ago, the number of people in the Fuzi generation has doubled, reaching more than 200 people. Chen Daoxian knew that there would be more and more people studying clan in the future, especially after the birth of the Zizi generation. The number of cultivators in the Chen family would explode. When he walked to a class that was in class, Chen Daoxian stopped silently. Inside the classroom, Chen Xianhe is standing on the podium, with a red face, giving a class to the immortal seedlings with the character of blessing. Under the podium, the immortal seedlings of the Fu character generation looked active and spoke enthusiastically. Consciousness dissipated. In the industrial area, 8 or 9-year-old children are refining flying swords and refining elixir. Ordinary Chen workers are also constantly busy, adjusting machines and installing elixir. The expressions of these young cultivators were meticulous, and there was absolutely no innocence of children in them. But they, for the sake of the family, have no regrets and no regrets. See this? Chen Daoxian opened his eyes. His eyes were unprecedentedly firm. This is my family, I want to protect it. No one can hurt it. No one. At this moment, Chen Daoxian's will is extremely firm. Chapter 193. Wait for a long time after class. Chen Xianhe looked at Chen Daoxian, who was silent, and asked, "Is there something on your mind?" Hearing this, Chen Daoxian smiled and shook his head. "Then come with me." "Okay." Chen Daoxian nodded. Chen Xianhe immediately used the wind control technique, rolled up Chen Daoxian, and flew him in the direction of Qitong Mountain. Along the way, Chen Xianhe did not speak, and Chen Daoxian also remained silent. About half an hour. The red copper mountain is already in sight. Remember the first time I brought you here? Remember? Looking at the direction of Chen Ziyan's finger, a cave dwelling stood on the top of the blue mountain. That cave is the cave where Chen Xianhe has lived for decades. Over the years, Chen Xianhe has lived there, silently guarding the Chen family. To this day, Chen Xianhe occasionally comes to this cave to clean up. The two flew very fast. In a blink, it crossed Chen Ziyan's cave. That's the fire room. I remember when I brought you here for the first time, you were only so tall. Chen Xianhe made a gesture to his waist. At that time, I also passed the family's refining tool to you with the idea of giving it a try. Unexpectedly, your crafting talent is so amazing that you have led the family step by step to where it is today. Chen Xianhe spoke quietly. Chen Daoxian listened silently. That is Copper Mountain. In the end, Chen Xianhe pointed to a bare mountain top, a little sighed. Everything in my Chen family starts from this spiritual mine. Uncle 13. Daoxian, Chen Xianhe looked at him. I tell you this because I want to tell you that no matter what the future of the family is in the future, I will not blame you, nor will the clansmen blame you. Because you have already done everything for your family. Daoxian, you are worthy of any clan. Chen Xianhe patted Chen Daoxian on the shoulder and said seriously. Chen Daoxian smiled and nodded. Chen Xianhe didn't ask Chen Daoxuan's thoughts, and Chen Daoxian didn't say anything. Limited by the cultivation base, many things are said, except to add guilt and trouble to Chen Xianhe too, without any use. In fact, Chen Xian's remarks have given Chen Daoxian great encouragement. At the very least at Chen Xianhe, he knew the attitude of the clansmen towards him, the young patriarch, and the clansmen's support for him. That's enough. No one is stupid and no one is blind. The contribution Chen Daoxian has made to the Chen family is less than 1% of the patriarchs of all dynasties combined. This is obvious to all the Chen clan. After sending Chen Xianhe back to the clan school, Chen Daoxian found Chen Fuxing. Seeing this half-year-old boy who was less than 10 years old and had just reached his chest, Chen Daoxuan's face showed a look of surprise. Fuxing, you young patriarch, I succeeded. Chen Fuxing smiled. Sword intent. Chen Fuxing understood the sword intent. Not only that, but he also entered the realm of the 9th level of qi refining. This completely broke the record set by Chen Daoxian. He became the youngest cultivator ever to realize the sword intent. Perhaps it is easy to use resources to smash a 9th level qi refining cultivator who is less than 10 years old, but no matter how much resources are used, it is impossible to smash a monster who understands the sword intent at the age of 9. Seeing him, Chen Daoxian seemed to see another top powerhouse rising up in the Chen family. Fuxing, great. Chen Daoxian patted Chen Fuxing's shoulder heavily. Chen Fuxing was very excited to receive such affirmation from Chen Daoxian. Excited, Chen Daoxian handed over a flying sword. This is a 3rd order high-grade earth attribute flying sword that I refined for you. It was originally intended to be given to you as a gift after you build your foundation. Now I will give it to you in advance. With that said, Chen Daoxian handed over the flying sword worth millions of spirit stones. This flying sword is the proud work of Chen Daoxian after he was promoted to the 3rd order refiner. It is also the best flying sword he has refined so far. It is higher than the rank of his 2 3rd-rank middle-rank natal flying swords. Taking the flying sword handed over by Chen Daoxian, Chen Fuxing was even more excited, but then hesitantly said, however, the rank of this flying sword is too high, so I can't use it. Of course you can't use it now, but you'll be able to use it almost after you have successfully established the foundation. Having said that, Chen Daoxian told him the terrifying increase after comprehending the sword intent foundation during the qi refining period. This explosive strength improvement was Chen Daoxuan's personal experience. Perhaps Chen Fuxing will not be as terrifying as Chen Daoxuan's promotion in spiritual consciousness, but in swordsmanship, he will definitely have a qualitative leap like Chen Daoxian did back then. If he is lucky enough, maybe Chen Fuxing will be able to touch the 2nd tangible realm of sword intent as soon as he builds the foundation as he did back then. Until then, Chen Fuxing's strength is not comparable to that of the cultivator of the Purple Mansion, but he is definitely an invincible existence under the Purple Mansion. The Chen family finally had a 2nd pillar besides Chen Daoxian. Although the age of this pillar is a bit young. Fuxing. From today you have to protect the Chen family, especially when I'm not in the family. Don't worry, young patriarch. Chen Fuxing nodded heavily. 10 days later, the fairy city of Guang'an Prefecture. Spirit boats gathered from all over Zhangzhou towards Guang'an Mansion. Chen Daoxian led the coalition forces in the Western Defense Zone, with a total of 500 Foundation Establishment cultivators and 5 Spirit Void battleships, rushing over. The outer city of Guang'an, the city where the Zhou family lived. Countless Zhou clan members raised their heads and looked at the scene in front of them that they had never seen in their entire lives. Daddy, there are so many big ships. I'm going to tell my mother. All the Zhou clan members trembled when they saw the immortal boat above their heads. If it wasn't for the immortal master to greet him in time, it is estimated that these mortals of the Zhou clan would all be on their knees and kowtow. For mortals, the monks are the existence they can't reach. This is also one of the reasons why the Zhou family has banned air formations in Guang'an to avoid disturbing mortals. Think about it. If the air formation is not banned, hundreds of thousands of cultivators will fly around the heads of mortals every day. What will be the impact? If mortals are used to it, It will also cause the monks' deterrence to mortals to decrease. Simply, the Zhou family came up with a no-air formation. Everyone would save trouble. On the deck of the Spirit Void battleship, Chen Daoxian stood in the middle, with Lei Zhan and Zhou Muqing standing beside him. Zhou Mubai. I was looking around at the spirit boats from Beppu, and a voice resounded through the sky. Who is this man? Do not know. It's the fire spirit Taoist of Shuan House. Is it him? Taoist Huiling, who single-handedly destroyed hundreds of foundation-building cultivators in Yunmeng Pass? Yes, it's him. Moreover, he was only in the late stage of foundation building at that time, and he never imagined that he is now on the third floor of the Purple Mansion. Lei Zhan looked envious. In terms of Lingzhen, he is the same as Taoist Huiling. Both of them are cultivators of Tianlingen. It stands to reason that Lei Zhan was also a foundation-building cultivation base back then, and the gap between the two is not so big. But Taoist Huiling was a family cultivator with the full support of the family behind him, but Lei Zhan was a loose cultivator, and he was the kind of loose cultivator who had not become a guest of a big family. In addition, he did not continue to hang out on the battlefield of Izumo. Naturally, in terms of resources, he couldn't compare with the core children of a big family such as Taoist Huiling, and the difference between the two was the worse. Heard. Chen Daoxian looked over curiously. Is there anything special about this fire spirit Taoist? How dare you call Brother Zhou's name in the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture? It's you kid why itchy skin again? The next moment, another voice sounded in the sky, and a white figure stood proudly in the sky. Not Zhou Mubai, who was it? Taoist Huiling looked young in his early 20s, with a fair complexion and a red mark like a fire pattern on his forehead. He was dressed in a loose red Taoist robe, and his long hair was casually tied behind his head, giving him a bohemian look. Hey. Hearing Zhou Mubai's words, Taoist Huiling laughed. Afterwards, the two embraced each other in public, then smashed each other's chest hard, and smiled at each other. This scene not only surprised others, but also shattered Chen Daoxian's three views. In his eyes, Zhou Mubai should be a very serious and steady person, but he didn't expect to make such a frivolous action in public. Chapter 194. Shizi. The main hall of the Allied Forces headquarters in Guang'an Prefecture. A shocking roar came from the hall. How can he? How dare? Abandon the city and flee. Inside the hall, Zhou Mingho, the patriarch of the Zhou family who has always been suave and mild-tempered, was furious at this moment, and his eyes were red. Although the Zhangzhou coalition was hastily formed this time, there were more than 10 large clans who came. Although few of these big families were comparable to the Zhou family in Guang'an, most of them were also much stronger than the Yang family in Guang'an, the second largest family in Guang'an. All of them are the most powerful clans in each province. Otherwise, you will not be able to represent your hometown to participate in this meeting. Among the dozen or so families, the three most powerful are the Zhou family in Guang'an, the Zhao family in Shuan, and the Zhang family in Jinan. The gap between these three major families, whether it is the number of monks or high-level monks, is not too big. Even their respective core disciples are outstanding. For example, Taoist Huiling from the Zhao family in Shuan House, and Henry Zhang from the Zhang family in Jinan House, are all famous people on the list of Tianjiao in the Zifu House of Wangxinghai. Wanxinghai Zifu Tianjiao list. It is a list based on the record and potential of the cultivators of the Purple Mansion in Wangxinghai. The specific ranking of the list is not announced to the outside world. But the monks on the list all know their specific ranking on the Zifu Tianjiao list. Relatively speaking, the three lists produced by Qianyuan Jianzong are still very credible. Unless there is a Zifu cultivator who deliberately hides his strength, the Zifu cultivator on this list is probably the strongest group of Zifu cultivators in Wanxinghai. After all, Wanxinghai and Izumo have fought a war for hundreds of years. Which cultivator of Zifu has never been on the battlefield, and can hide his clumsiness on the battlefield? Few people can do it. Because the fighting style on the battlefield is different from that in normal times, there is rarely a situation of equal power. If you don't want to die, you can only go all out and let yourself live as much as possible on the battlefield. Zhou Mubai's original ranking on the Zifu Tianjiao ranking was out of the top 100, But after this wave of corpses on Lotus Island, his ranking went straight to the top 10. Currently ranked 9th. In other words, among the cultivators in the Purple Mansion in the entire Wan Xinghai, Zhou Mubai's strength can be ranked 9th. You must know that he is only on the 4th floor of the Purple Mansion. If he waited until he reached the 9th floor of Zifu, wouldn't he be able to touch the top 3 or even the first position on the Zifu Tianjiao list? This shows that Zhou Mubai's strength is strong. Chen Daoxian has been comparing his own strength with him and found that there is still a big gap with him. In fact, it is not that Chen Daoxian is too weak, but that Zhou Mubai is too strong. Zhou Mubai, who was on the 4th floor of the Purple Mansion, was now fully qualified to fight against the weak Jindan early-stage cultivator. Inside the hall, the cultivators sent by all ethnic groups to participate in this meeting were all angry when they heard the news. Zhou Mingho's roar aroused the deepest pain in everyone's heart. Then, Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family, abandoned Zhenan Pass and fled, causing Zhenan Pass to fall. Now Cangzhou Xianqing is besieged, and everyone is still thinking about helping Cangzhou, but Yi Wudao ran away again. You know, Cangzhou Xianqing is different from Zinangguan. This is Yi Wudao's own clan. In the eyes of Yi Wudao, a selfish beast who is greedy for life and fears death. His own dog's life is the most important thing. It is not surprising that he can do this. As soon as Zhou Mingho's roar stopped, Henry Zhang of Jinan Mansion said coldly. Chen Daoxian looked at the young monk in front of him when he heard the sound. Standing in the hall, this person made no secret of his cultivation. His cultivation was even higher than that of Zhou Mubai, reaching the 5th floor of the Purple Mansion. Dressed in white clothes, carrying a long sword with a gleaming azure light on his back, his eyes were extremely sharp, and he faintly exuded a compelling cold light. In Henry Zhang's words, he did not take Yi Wudao, the Jindan cultivator, in his eyes at all, calling him a beast. Who knows that people hear this? No one dared to speak up, and Yi Wudao was easy to say, but behind Yi Wudao stood the 3rd elder of Qinyuan Jianzong, a great monk in the late nascent soul. Henry Zhang scolded Yi Wudao as a beast. Then the 3rd elder of Qinyuan Jianzong was not an old beast, which made everyone present dare to answer. Glancing at the silent crowd, Henry Zhang sneered and let out an obvious sneer. Daoyu Zhang said it well. Zhou Mubai stood up and scolded. 50 years ago, Yi Wudao abandoned Zinangguan and fled, so that my Cangzhou cultivator lost more than 1 million people. This time he abandoned Cangzhou Xianqing and fled, thus putting hundreds of millions of mortals and monks in danger. Such cowards who are greedy for life and fear of death, saying that he is a beast, are all flattering him. Good. Taoist Hualing also stood up and scolded. This time, everyone remembered the old and new hatred against Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family, and they followed behind the 3 and condemned. Chen Daoxian stood in the crowd frowning silently. Yi Wudao ran away? Is this greed for life and fear of death or something else? Of course, no matter what, Cangzhou Xianqing must not fall, otherwise, the next person who suffers will be everyone in Cangzhou. Everyone. Zhou Mingho said loudly, although Yi Wudao is shameless, Cangzhou Xianqing must be saved. Because this is not only to save Cangzhou Xianqing, but also to save ourselves. Patriarch Zhou. In the crowd, Henry Zhang bowed his hands. There are so many corpses. I wonder if there is a good plan? Hearing this, Zhou Mingho shook his head and said solemnly, there is no good plan, only a deadly fight. This? Everyone couldn't help looking at each other. Only fight to the death. This sentence made everyone feel extremely heavy. But think of the terrifying number of corpse tides, and as many as 100 Zifu-level corpse servants. No one could think of any conspiracy to solve this disaster. From Lianhua Island to Cangzhou Xianqing, it is at least 100,000 miles along the way. With such a long distance, coupled with the inaction of the Yi family, how many islands and how many mortal monks were poisoned by corpses? Everyone just thinks about this. Simply shudder. It is roughly estimated that there are at least hundreds of millions of human races from Lianhua Island to Cangzhou Xianqing. So many people, even if only half of the island falls, will cause a disaster. This disaster, compared to the chaos of the gods of the past, was even worse. After all, the chaos of divine judgment is just a war between monks. Although this kind of war has a very wide range, the monks will not slaughter mortals for no reason. Even if the cultivators of the other side were killed, mortals would generally only be reduced to slaves and would not be slaughtered. This rule was established after Qianyuan Jianzong unified Wan Xinghai. Even when it comes to dealing with the mortals of the Izumo kingdom, Qianyuan Jianzong also adopted this policy. Not wanton slaughtering mortals is the bottom line of Qianyuan Jianzong. This is also the foundation on which Qianyuan Jianzong's rule in Wangxinghai has always been very stable. If Qianyuan Jianzong is really cruel, but all those who oppose it will be slaughtered, and even the mortals of the opponent's forces will not be left, it will not have the prestige it has now. The formation of the Zhangzhou alliance was extremely fast. Under the unified coordination of the Zhou family, the Zhangzhou alliance is dominated by 3 major families, with 21 families participating. The cultivators participating in this battle are all the most elite cultivators of all ethnic groups, and there is not even a cultivator in the late stage of qi refining. All of them are cultivators above the foundation establishment stage. No way, the soldiers are very fast. Their spirit boats could not carry a large number of qi refining cultivators. In addition, the main goal of the Zhangzhou alliance is to eliminate the high-level zombies in the corpse group. Once the high-level zombies are completely killed, those low-level zombies are headless flies, and the remaining work is to slowly clean up these flies. Therefore, the Zhangzhou alliance did not bring a qi refining cultivator. This is different from the Izumo frontier. The most important reason why the Izumo country frontline recruited so many late-stage qi refining cultivators was not because of the combat power of the late-stage qi refining cultivators. It was the Qianyuan sword sect that wanted Wan Xinghai's qi refining period to have a good way out. How many high-level loose cultivators, even Yuaning Zhenjuan loose cultivators, rely on the accumulation of military exploits on the front line of Izumo Kingdom, in exchange for resources, and step by step to reach their current position. Millions of miles away, a huge island like a small Xianzhou, located in the center of Wangxinghai. On the periphery of this small immortal continent, there are many islands. Looking closely, each island is an independent cave. Countless caves have constructed a perfect defensive formation outside this small immortal continent. Except for the highest level of Qianyuan sword sect, no one knows what the level of this formation has reached. Anyway, with Chun Daoxuan's formation level comparable to that of the 4th Order Formation Master, if you stand here, you will not be able to judge the rank of this big formation. He usually arranges a formation, which at most covers an island and an immortal city. There is nothing like this. The secret realms of the caves are completely different from the main world. On the periphery of the main island of Qianyuan Jianzong, a huge and unimaginable battle has been constructed. This is where the Qianyuan sword sect resides. Enter this small fairyland. It will be found that this small fairyland is not small at all, and even more than 10 times larger than the area seen by the outside world. Cave Heaven's secret realm. This small immortal continent is also a huge cave. The Qianyuan sword sect has been inherited from the Mahayana true immortal, and with the accumulation of so many generations, its power has already expanded to a point that is unimaginable to outsiders. Although thousands of years ago, Qianyuan Jianzong was driven from Xianyunzhu to Wangxinghai by Xianqing Taoist League. But I didn't expect that Qianyuan Jianzong not only did not decline, but took advantage of Wan Xinghai's resources to take off again. As a result, Qianyuan Jianzong now brings all the forces of the entire Wangxinghai to coerce out of the Cloud Country and approach the hinterland of the Xianqing Dao League. Within the main cave, in a fairy palace, a group of powerful monks sat high on the thrones. These powerful monks are the highest level of Qianyuan Jianzong. Among them, the 3 elders of Qianyuan Jianzong are impressively listed. Have you heard about Zhangzhou? A gentle voice sounded in the hall. When everyone heard the words, their expressions were different. Some looked solemn, some frowned, and some mocked. Sect Master, the corpse chaos in Zhangzhou is sweeping. We can't wait any longer. An old man with silver hair and a childish face spoke up. Another elder shook his head and retorted, "It is not difficult to suppress the corpse chaos, but it is difficult to remove the curse of Shenzhuazhenren." He paused. In the end, Shenzhuazhenren is just a disease of scabies. I'm afraid he knows about the new channel that my Qianyuan Jianzong discovered in the Wangxinghai underwater world. Elder Wu is right. Another elder nodded. If you want to stop Jinjue Shen from continuing the chaos, you only need to send a Yuanying Jinjuan to be stationed in Songzhou, but it is difficult to prevent him from revealing the secrets of Wang Xinghai's underwater world. Outside world. That's true. Yes. Everyone nodded. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect, sitting in the most central position, was shrouded in a cloud of clouds, and outsiders couldn't see her face at all. She could only vaguely see her slender figure. At the position where she started, a young man dressed in white with an impatient look on his face leaned on the throne. After careful observation, I found that he was wandering in the sky. Third Elder, what do you think? The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect looked at the indifferent Third Elder Yin. As a great monk in the late Yuanying period, Yin's cultivation level ranked among the top 5 even in the entire Qinyuan Jianzong. Although his strength is not comparable to those of the Zhenhai Palace Hall Master and Qinyuan Sword Sect Master, but among the elders, he is the strongest. The elder faction of Qinyuan Jianzong has always been headed by him, and Yi Yin's seniority is the same as the previous Qinyuan Jianzong Sect Master, so he has a great influence in the sect. Second only to the current Qinyuan Jianzong suzerain. If it wasn't for his son Yi Wudao who abandoned Zenangwan and fled 50 years ago, he had a very bad influence within the Qinyuan Sword Sect, and Yi Yin's influence could even be comparable to that of the Qinyuan Sword Sect Sect Master. Yi Yin is dressed in a loose lavender robe with long sleeves hanging on the ground. Although he is the elder of the Qinyuan Sword Sect Master, his face is very young. If he hadn't seen his deep eyes that were completely different from the young face, you will definitely think that this person is a young Taoist, not a true monarch nascent soul who is over 2,000 years old. The third elder, Yi Yin, cupped his hands and said indifferently, "This matter. Not finished." Outside Asgard, a young monk flew in quickly. Feeling the terrifying pressure in the immortal palace, the young cultivator immediately knelt down, bowed his head and said, reporting to the sect master, Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family in Songzhou, came to the sect for help. This? Yi Wudao came to ask for help. Hasn't he been banned for 100 years? Whether it is asking for help or taking refuge, who knows? After all, this is not the first time for him, and he is very familiar. Seeing this cultivator, the original listless Zhenhai Palace master suddenly regained his spirits and said with a big laugh, "Quick, let Yi Wudao come in." To shut up. The young master of Zhenhai Palace was not even excited when he heard a reprimand from his senior sister from the Sea of Knowledge. "Sect master, everyone." Yi Yin stood up from the throne. The old man remembered that there was still a pot of spiritual elixir to finish, so he retired first. The old man happens to have a pot of medicinal herbs that has not been finished, so he will retire first. Old man. Not long after Yi Yin proposed to retire, all the elders stood up and handed over to the sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect to retire. "Elders, please." Qinyuan Jianzong's gentle voice of approval sounded in the fairy palace. Soon. Immediately, more than 1/3 of the figure in Asgard disappeared. Chapter 195. As a group of people headed by the 3 elders finished, silence returned to Asgard once again. Half an hour. The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect said, "Since Yi Wudao is unwilling to be the bait, how about sending Yaoer to take on this important task?" "Sister." The hall master of Zhenhai Palace looked at each other in shock. Through Wuxia, he saw the gentle but firm face, and the doubts in his heart finally turned into a sigh. "Follow the order of the sect master." The rest of the people looked at each other in dismay, then cupped their hands and said, "I will obey the decree of the suzerain." "Good." The sect master of Qinyuan Sword Sect nodded. "Father, I have no objection to catching Shenjuezen, but why let me be the bait?" In a majestic immortal palace, a monk wearing a blue Taoist robe and a golden vertical stripe between his eyebrows, his face was full of indignation. "Oh." Yi Yin's face was indifferent, and he couldn't see his anger in anger. "What do you mean, let you be bait and wronged you?" "Father, that's not what I meant." There was a hint of dissatisfaction on Yi Wudao's arrogant face. "I just don't want to hand my life into that person's hands." "Which one?" "It's him." Qin Zhan snapped. Before he finished speaking, Yi Wudao felt that his body flew up involuntarily, followed by a burning pain in his left cheek. Boom! Yi Wudao's body fell heavily on the jade floor of the main hall. Inside Asgard. Seeing this scene, the maids standing on both sides of the hall all bowed their heads, trembling with fright. Yi Wudao stood up with a gloomy face. Next moment, the servants in the hall were all burning with colorless flames. In an instant, these servants with the highest cultivation level but the 9th level of qi refining were all turned into flying ashes, and they couldn't even say the words of begging for mercy. "Father, you are satisfied," Yi Wudao said dully. "You don't deserve to call him by his first name." Yi Yin's face didn't change at all, as if it was not him but someone else who just slapped the slap. "The Hall Master of Zhenhai Palace is the most talented disciple in the history of my Qinyuan sword sect. You don't deserve it." Feeling the terrifying aura of his father, the anger in Yi Wudao's heart was instantly extinguished, and cold sweat involuntarily slipped down his temples. Seeing his son trembling and not daring to speak, Yi Yin unconsciously showed a hint of sadness in his eyes, and his tone became softer. "Does it hurt?" Yi Wudao shook his head in horror. "Father." Yi Wudao's tone of voice became cautious. "I'm worried if I use me as a bait. If the Lord of Zhenhai Palace takes this opportunity to retaliate against you, wouldn't that child's life be hurt?" Yi Yin glanced at Yi Wudao. Seeing Yi Yin's eyes, Yi Wudao didn't dare to argue anymore. He hurriedly bowed, and said embarrassingly, "Father, the boy retire." Watching Yi Wudao slowly retreat, Yi Yin raised his head, looked at Lu Yun outside Asgard, and murmured, "Child, don't blame me." Wuxia, Southwest Sea. In the sky, one after another, the spirit boats flew from the direction of the immortal city of Guang'an to the immortal city of Cangzhou. These spirit boats are the coalition forces formed by the major families in Cangzhou. On a spirit void battleship, Chen Daoxian stood side by side with Zhou Mubai, Henry Zhang, and Taoist Hualing brother Zhou. "Do you mean that Cangzhou Xiancheng and Yi Wudao are just bait laid by Qinyuan Jianzong? Right?" Zhou Mubai nodded. "The corpse tied on Lotus Island has been going on for so long, and I haven't heard any news from the immortal Shenjue. It can be seen that the goal of the immortal Shenjue is definitely not my Guang'an prefecture, but the entire Cangzhou." He paused. "If you want to take the entire Cangzhou, you must capture Cangzhou Xiancheng, the largest fairy city in Cangzhou." Heard. Chen Daoxian frowned and said, "What if the real Shenjue didn't make a move? Call." Zhou Mubai breathed a sigh of relief, and said in deep thought, "No, he will shoot." "Brother Zhou, why are you so sure?" "Because this Cangzhou corpse riot is not a single riot, but a premeditated act." Before Zhou Mubai could speak, Zhang Xianling on the side said, "I just received a message that Yun Mengwen was violently attacked by the Xianqing Dao League. There are also signs that a large number of Xianqing Dao League troops are active in Qishui Xiancheng." "What do you mean the inside and the outside should be combined?" Chen Daoxian couldn't help thinking of Xiao Hong, who committed suicide in front of him, and a line in his heart gradually became clear. He said solemnly, "Shenju Zhenren took refuge in the Xianqing Dao League?" "It's not about taking refuge," Zhou Mubai shook his head. "Shenju Zhenren kind of person will not rely on anyone, to be precise. They should use each other. Shenju Zhenren needs Xianqing Daomeng to relieve his pressure. Xianqing Daomeng also needs him to give Qinyuan Sword Zone creates chaos." This? Chen Daoxian was quite puzzled. It should be difficult to do it just by relying on a real person, right? Although I don't know how strong the Qinyuan sword sect is, but the situation has developed so far that Qinyuan sword sect has not even sent a nascent soul true monarch. It can be seen that in the eyes of the other party, suppressing the corpse chaos is not worth mentioning. It's hard to do. Zhou Mubai also frowned and said, very puzzled, "Perhaps Shinjue Jinren has some trump cards that we don't know about." Hear this. Everyone's mood became heavier. Now, Cangzhou Xianqing is a chess piece, and their Cangzhou coalition is also a chess piece. On the chessboard, the flag bearers who really played chess were Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Daomen, and even Shenjue Jinren was just a slightly stronger piece. Of course, with the character of Shenjue Jin, he is definitely not willing to be a chess piece. He must have some way of breaking the game that everyone does not know. Just don't know. Whether it is Qianyuan Jianzong's chess higher move, or Shenjue a real person is even better. Facing this scene, although Chen Daoxian was unwilling, he knew it. Whether in front of Qianyuan Jianzong, Xianqing Dao League, or even Shunjuazhenren, he, including his family, are all weak and have no qualifications to bargain at all. Strength is the bargaining chip in chess. He and the Chun family have no such chips, and can only act as pawns for others to play chess. Yi Wudao has a biological father, who has a cultivation base of nascent soul. The major families of his Zhangzhou alliance do not have such a background, which can save them from this difficulty. Say it again. The real people of Shinjua came to Zhangzhou. As a local family in Zhangzhou, they did not do anything at the moment, so who were they waiting for? See, the atmosphere is a little dull. Zhou Mubai smiled and waved his hand. Forget it, let's not talk about these unhappy people. No matter what, Zhangzhou Xianqing must be rescued, and the corpse tide must be eliminated. What Brother Zhou said is very true. Taoist Huiling nodded. Since we don't talk about this, why not talk about Kendo? Very good. Hearing Henry Zhang talking about Kendo, Zhou Mubai and Chan Daoxian both lit up. As sword cultivators, if you ask them what topics they are most interested in, then Kendo will definitely come first. It is the dream of every sword cultivator to be able to talk about the understanding of Kendo with fellow swordsmen who are close to the cultivation level, and the realm of Kendo is different. However, no matter in Wanxinghai or Xianyun continent, the number of sword cultivators is very rare. Not to mention the fact that two sword cultivators whose cultivation bases in Kendo realms are almost the same are gathered together. If it weren't for the Zhangzhou Corps chaos, Zhou Mubai also rarely had the opportunity to sit with Henry Zhang and talk about Kendo. Hearing that Zhou Mubai, Zhang Xianling, and Chen Daoxian were going to talk about Kendo, Taoist Huiling immediately showed a look of helplessness. Chapter 196. Although the strength of Taoist Huiling is far beyond that of monks of the same rank, he is not a sword cultivator. Hearing the three of them talking about Kendo, it was a bit boring, because he doesn't understand. In other words, even if he understands it, he can't do it. His Kendo level is too far behind the three of them. After all, he couldn't even comprehend the sword intent. Yutako, go back first. Taoist Huiling shook his head. After all, the escape light flew towards the other spirit boat together. The three of them laughed when they saw this. Just laugh. Zhou Mubai nodded and said, if that's the case, it'll start to show my ugliness. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian and Henry Zhang cupped their hands and made a gesture of please. The sword intent I cultivated is a branch of the Jinxing sword intent in the 5 elements sword intent. It is called Gongjin sword intent. This sword intent is unparalleled in its sharpness. Zhou Mubai explained his swordsmanship to the two. Chen Daoxian and Henry Zhang listened, frowning from time to time because of confusion, and rejoiced at the sudden opening. Since my Gongjin sword intent has reached the second tangible state, I created this Qinglian sword art by myself. Let's see. Zhou Mubai stretched out his right palm and saw a cyan lotus flower budding in his palm. Suddenly, the cyan lotus bloomed in Zhou Mubai's palm, 1 petal, 2 petals, until the 3rd petal opened, and the petals of the cyan lotus became nothing. My Gongjin sword intent is still not comprehensible enough to make this green lotus flower open with 3 petals. Otherwise, the power of this sword art will at least double. Speaking of this, Zhou Gol shook his head regretfully. Brother Zhou is humble. Aside. When Henry Zhang heard this, he sighed. In the realm of sword intent double tangible, you can create your own sword tricks. Brother Zhou's talent in swordsmanship is so high that it really makes me wait for sword repairers to be ashamed. He stretched out his right palm and said, the sword intent that I cultivate is called Extreme Cold Sword Intent, and it is a branch of the Water Xing sword intent in the 5 elements sword intent. As he spoke, a flame of ice condensed in his palm. This icy flame is icy blue. Although the cold air is restrained, Chen Daoxian can still feel a frightening power of extreme cold on it. Unfortunately, although my sword intent has advanced to the 2nd level tangible realm, I haven't been able to comprehend my own sword art so far, and I can't fully exert the strength that belongs to this realm of swordsmanship, which is more than 1 step worse than Brother Zhou. A trace of regret flashed in Henry Zhang's eyes. Brother Zhang is humble. Zhou Mubai arched his hands. I'm not humble. You should understand that I am a person. I hate hypocrisy the most in my life. It is what it is. Henry Zhang shook his head. Otherwise, my position on the Zifu Tianjiao list would not be only the 43rd place. Heard. Zhou Gol remained silent. He knew that what Henry Zhang said was right. Henry Zhang's kendo realm is not weaker than him, and his cultivation is even higher than him, reaching the 5th floor of Zifu. The only difference between the two of them is that Zhou Mubai created his own sword art. To some extent, creating his own sword art means that the sword cultivator has clearly defined his own kendo path. I saw Henry Zhang put away the ice blue flame in his palm. Chen Daoxian stretched out his right palm and said in a slow voice, "The sword intent that I understand is a branch of the water-moving sword intent in the 5 elements sword intent." I see. Chen Daoxian's palm was first filled with rain, then white sword marks filled his palm, and finally, it turned into a star. It's a pity that I haven't been able to create my own sword art like Brother Zhou did. Self-created sword art, to a certain extent, has nothing to do with comprehension. It requires people who create their own swordsmanship to figure out the direction of their future swordsmanship. Otherwise, he is hesitant in his heart, and he will never be able to create his own sword art on his own kendo path. See this? Zhou Mubai smiled and said, "I can see it, you too didn't create your own swordsmanship. It's not because of lack of talent, but because of too much ambition." He paused, especially Daoxian Yu. He pointed at Chen Daoxian and said in a joking tone, "Don't you want to understand the complete sword intent of water movement?" "What?" "Hear this." Henry Zhang, who was on the side, looked at Chen Daoxian with a shocked expression, his eyes full of disbelief. "What is the concept of comprehending the complete water movement sword intent? You must know that whether it is his extreme cold sword intent or Chen Daoxian's silk rain sword intent, they are just branches of the water Xing sword intent. If you want to comprehend the complete water Xing sword intent, at least the sword cultivator is required to comprehend several or more branches of the water Xing sword intent. And every kind of sword intent is promoted to the 3rd level, the sword intent is transformed into a star, and then these several sword intents are merged into one, and then there is a certain chance to comprehend the complete water sword intent. As for how many branches of the water-moving sword intention to comprehend, it depends on the individual monk. Some monks comprehend the 2 branches of water-moving sword intent, and after reaching the triple realm, they merge into one, and they can step into the threshold of comprehension of water-moving sword intent. And some cultivators, even if they comprehend more than 10 branches of water-moving sword intent, after they are merged into one, they cannot step on the threshold of water-moving sword intent. Even if he was as strong as the hall master of Shanghai Hall, he couldn't figure out what it had to do with it. If it is related to understanding and kendo talent, how can those monks who can comprehend the 10 branches of water-moving sword intentions have poor understanding and kendo talent? Obviously, this has nothing to do with comprehension and kendo talent. In the end, some sword cultivators can only attribute it to luck. Of course, it is not to say that after comprehending the sword intent of the water movement, the strength will skyrocket. There is no such claim. Whether it is to comprehend the extreme cold sword intent or Chen Daoxian's silk rain sword intent, in the sword intent double realm, there is not much difference between the strength and the water traveling sword intent double realm. At least there is no substantial gap. So where is the gap? It's about potential. Extreme cold sword intent and silk rain sword intent, as branches of water Xing sword intent, have limited potential. For example, extreme cold sword intent in the history of Qianyuan sword sect, extreme cold sword intent can only be promoted to the 4th level of sword intent in the end, and cannot go any further. In other words, this path is already the ultimate after reaching the 4th level of sword intent. CU sword intent is slightly better, up to the 5th level of sword intent. But whether it is the 5th level of sword intent or the 4th level of sword intent, it means that this path is limited. However, no matter which sword cultivator, he doesn't want to be able to see his head at a glance in the way he walks. Therefore, many sword cultivators began to make plans for the future when the realm of kendo was still low, such as integrating sword intent and forcibly comprehending one of the 5 elements of sword intent. There are also some people with talent against the sky, or people with bad luck. The sword intent that I comprehended at the beginning was one of the 5 elements sword intent, not a branch sword intent. This kind of person, whose kendo potential is almost invisible, is the real sword cultivator among the sword cultivators, and the arrogance of the arrogance. Chapter 197. The Cangzhou coalition was extremely fast. In just a few days, Cangzhou Xianqing was faintly in sight. Along the way, the tragic situation that everyone saw made everyone feel more and more heavy. The corpse tide spread faster than everyone imagined, and the closer it was to Cangzhou Xianqing, the more terrifying the corpse tide. These low-level zombies, under the command of Sun Fu, galloped across the sea on a sailboat. The high-level flying stallion rides the clouds and rages on the islands along the way. The Cangzhou allied forces wiped out several waves of such swarms along the way, which wasted a lot of time. On the deck of the Spirit Void battleship, Chen Daoxian frowned and said, Brother Zhang, look, heard. Zhou Mubai and Henry Zhang looked in the direction of Chen Daoxian's fingers. I saw that the giant island where Cangzhou Xianqing was located was completely besieged by a black corpse. The black corpse tide was innumerable, besieging the entire island. This scene made everyone's scalp numb. In just a few months it has actually eroded so far. Zhou Mubai, who had been fighting corpses for several years, couldn't believe what he saw. Whether it was him or Chen Daoxian, there was a sense of joy in his heart. Fortunately, the real target of the Lianhua Island Corpse Group was not Guang'an Prefecture, but Cangzhou Xianqing. Otherwise, this terrifying force cannot be resisted by Guang'an Prefecture at all. Because they swept away casually, they had found dozens of Zifu corpse servants in the corpse group. These Zifu corpse servants are at least in the early period of Zifu, and what's more, they are in the late period of Zifu. Even if they are compared with the two Sun Fu brothers, their strength is similar. In terms of high-end combat power, Cangzhou coalition forces have no advantage at all. Cangzhou's high-level cultivators have a relatively severe fault. In the entire Cangzhou, there is only one Jindan cultivator, and he has escaped. Except for Yi Wudao, there is no real Jindan person in Cangzhou now. And the corpse. After careful observation, everyone found that the opponent actually had 127 Zifu level combat power. Among them, 13 of the late Zifu, 29 in the middle of the Zifu, and the rest are all the early days of the Zifu. This force has already caused a crushing advantage to the Cangzhou coalition. But the Cangzhou coalition forces, there are only 7 people who can reach the late stage of Zifu. Among them, Zhou Mubai, Zhang Xianling, and Taoist Hualing were also included in their strengths that were comparable to or even surpassed the existences of the late Zifu. As for the middle period of Zifu, there were quite a few Cangzhou coalition forces, reaching 27. In the early days of Zifu, there were a lot fewer people, less than 40 people. In total, the Cangzhou allied forces had a total of 71 people in Zifu, and even if the Zifu in Cangzhou Xianqing was added, it would not exceed 100 people. This power, even if it encounters Jindan real person, can be surrounded and killed. However, in the face of the 127 Zifu zombies, there is no advantage. The gap in high-end combat power is not the most desperate. Compared with the Cangzhou allied forces, the most terrifying thing about the corpse group is its terrifying number. Look around. Almost all the sea surface in a radius of hundreds of miles was filled with corpses. Some of them took boats and some simply sailed through the waves in the sea, and the target was the immortal city of Cangzhou in front of them. Be careful. Flying zombies. In the spirit boat group, a loud shout resounded in everyone's ears. Chen Daoxian could hear that it was the voice of Zhou Mingho, commander of the coalition forces. I see. A cloud shrouded in front of him, and countless flying zombies rushed towards everyone's spirit boat. This kind of scene everyone has encountered more than once, and has long had a wealth of experience. It's just that compared to before, the number of corpses in front of them is much larger. Let me. Henry Zhang snorted coldly. The voice just fell. He saw an ice blue flame rise in his palm, and then the ice blue flame turned into a blue ice phoenix. The blue ice phoenix is only as big as Henry Zhang's palm. But on the way to the corpse group, it became bigger and bigger, until the wings spread hundreds of feet wide. The speed of the blue ice phoenix was as fast as a streamer, and there were very few cultivators present who could react. With the strength of Chen Daoxian's consciousness, he naturally sees the trajectory of the blue ice phoenix hitting the corpse. Just when the two collided, an extremely cold force erupted on the blue ice phoenix. In an instant, in front of this group of at least tens of thousands of corpses, They were directly frozen into ice by this extreme cold force. Sky. The corpses, which were frozen into lumps of ice, fell crazily toward the corpse tide below like a hailstorm. Pieces of corpses condensed into ice lumps fell on the sea surface, freezing the surrounding sea water, as well as the rushing corpses. An ice field with a radius of thousands of feet was formed on the sea surface below. This sword slaughtered at least hundreds of thousands of corpses, which was shocking. After the sword was over, Qian Daoxian saw an ice-blue flying sword as fast as a streamer, and got into Henry Zhang's Dantian Sea of Qi. Okay. In the coalition army, the monks burst into cheers, and their morale was boosted. Originally using this big move, Henry Zhang's face was slightly pale, but seeing the soaring morale of the cultivators, he felt that the mana consumed was completely worth it. Brother Zhang, well done. Zhou Mubai laughed. As the group of flying zombies blocking the road was slaughtered by Henry Zhang with a sword, the Cangzhou coalition did not encounter any obstacles and flew directly into the defense formation of Cangzhou Xiancheng. Now, all the monks and mortals shrunk into Cangzhou Xiancheng. The originally empty immortal city is now overcrowded after urgently housing hundreds of millions of people. Fortunately, the Yi family is the Jindan family after all, and it is the Jindan family that is backed by the late nascent soul cultivator. Therefore, the Yi family also has a small cave. Thanks to the existence of this cave, hundreds of millions of monks and mortals can temporarily hide in this cave. Otherwise, Cangzhou Xiancheng, which can only accommodate millions of cultivators at ordinary times, can at most accommodate tens of millions of mortals and cultivators. It is simply impossible to take in hundreds of millions of mortals. Of course, the Yi family saved these mortals for another important reason besides most of them being from the Yi family's own clan. That is, it can no longer add vitality to the corpse group. If these hundreds of millions of mortals are thrown into the corpse group and transformed into zombies, the corpse tide will be more difficult to control. By the time, I am afraid that Cangzhou Xiancheng will not even have a chance to support the arrival of reinforcements, and it will be overrun by the corpse tide. Although the strength of every zombie that has just been transformed by Yin Sha Qi is not worth mentioning. Only one qi refining cultivator can kill dozens or more. But the hundreds of millions of corpses are a force that even the cultivators of the Zifu, and even the cultivators of Jindan feel terrified. Anyway, with Yi Wudeo's strength, he couldn't deal with a corpse tide of this scale. Actually, even with the extremely strong living force of the Cangzhou allied forces, the monks in Cangzhou Xiancheng couldn't balance the tide of corpses in front of them. Everyone's only expectation is that to a certain extent, Qianyuan Jianzong can come out in time to save the scene. Chapter 198. Cangzhou Xiancheng. As the spirit boat slowly landed, a tsunami of cheers erupted in the fairy city. At this time, whether it was a mortal or a monk, when they saw the spirit boats, they seemed to see a savior, and they felt a sense of happiness for the rest of their lives. But a sane monk can see it. With the number of monks carried on these spirit boats, facing such a huge group of corpses, it was a drop in the bucket. The arrival of this batch of reinforcements can at most delay the fall of Cangzhou Xiancheng. As for the extermination of the corpse group, it is completely overthinking. And, as time goes by, the group of corpses gathered outside Cangzhou Xiancheng will only increase. Because of the countless islands spanning more than 100,000 miles from Lotus Island to Cangzhou Xiancheng, there are always some captured fish that have not yet been captured. When these islands fall, the number of corpses will inevitably increase. Yes, residents. Yi Hongsheng, the elder of the Yi family, who is also the head of the Yi family at this time, led a group of Yi family elite cultivators, waiting outside the hall. Yi Hongsheng looked like an old man in his 50s, his face was thin, he wore a jade crown, he was wearing Taoist cum, and he was dressed in fiery red spirit armor. When he saw the cultivators of the coalition army headed by Zhou Mingho, he immediately showed an expression of joy. Fellow Taoist Zhou, I've been waiting for you. Yi Hongsheng took a few steps forward, grabbed Zhou Mingho's hands and said excitedly. Zhou Mingho calmly pulled out his hands and said coldly, "Where's Yi Wudao?" The embarrassment and resentment on Yi Hongsheng's face disappeared in a flash, and then he smiled again. My ancestors felt that the tide of corpses was huge, and rushed to Qianyuan Jianzong for help a few days ago. It's time for Qianyuan's sword sect. Haha, there was a burst of laughter from the crowd of the coalition forces. This request for help is really interesting. Neither the reinforcements of Qianyuan Jianzong nor Yi Wudao himself return. Shouldn't there be a dignified Jindan real person lost his way? Ha 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 ha. A burst of laughter broke out in the crowd. Immediately, another person in the crowd laughed and said, I don't think it's very likely to get lost. Back then, Zhenren Yi ran all the way back to Cangzhou from Zhenan Pass, and he could return smoothly for this distance of more than 10 million miles, not to mention the mere millions of miles. What the brother said is very true. It's the younger brother who forgot. Ha 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 ha. Hearing everyone's sarcasm, Yi Hongsheng's face turned pale, but for the sake of the overall situation, he chose to endure. It's just that he can bear it, but it doesn't mean that other Yi family cultivators can bear it. Next moment. A young cultivator of the Yi family stood up from the crowd with red eyes and cupped his hands. Which fellow Taoist said just now, please stand up. Stand up, stand up. Lei Zhan flew out of the coalition soldiers and said loudly, Your grandfather Lei said this, what should you do? It's you. Yi Zhaoyuan's expression changed abruptly when he saw Lei Zhan. How could he not remember the person in front of him? Back then, he went to the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion alone and wanted to ask for a second-order water spirit bead. But he was disturbed by this reckless man. Now he is scolding Yi Yes family in public again. He really doesn't know whether to live or die. New hatred and old hatred, coupled with the despair and anger after being abandoned by his ancestors, made Yi Shuyuan completely explode. Okay, you hairy thief. Yi Shuyuan pointed at Lei Zhan. Today you insulted my Yi family so much. How dare you fight me to the death? Just because you are a coward, why don't you dare? Okay, come. Yi Shuyuan wanted to fly out, but was imprisoned in place by a powerful force, unable to move. Yi Shuyuan turned around with difficulty, and saw the great elder Yi Hongsheng shaking his head at him, and a line of tears rolled down his cheeks. Elder, let me go. Yi Shuyuan said indifferently. Xiao Yuan, don't be impulsive. I know. Seeing his expression, Yi Hongsheng sighed and released the imprisoning force exerted on Yi Shuyuan. Yi Shuyuan felt the force of this restraint disappear, slowly straightened his body, glanced at the coalition cultivator who was glaring at his Yi family, took a deep breath and said, Elder, over the years I've had enough. It's gone. Shuyuan. Yi Shuyuan ignored the dissuasion, took 2 steps forward slowly, and bowed to the cultivator of the coalition army. Alt Songzhou colleagues. Yi Shuyuan said loudly, That's right, Yi Wudao, my ancestor of the Yi family, escaped. Abandoned the city and escaped. Abandoned the million cultivators of my Yi family and escaped. Today I, Yi Shuyuan, make an oath here that I will no longer respect Yi Wudao as my ancestor of the Yi family. If this oath is violated, heaven and earth will perish. Boom boom boom. A dull thunder sounded. After making the great Dao oath, Yi Shuyuan turned around, walked in front of the great elder Yi Hongsheng, knelt on the ground and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Great elder fellow clan, although I Yi Shuyuan don't respect Yi Wudao, I am the elder of the Yi family. Ancestor, but I have no choice but to get the blood of this body from him. Today I Yi Shuyuan give it back to him. Xiao Yuan. Don't. Brother Xiu. A flying sword was as fast as lightning, flew out of the storage bag, and slashed across his dantian, almost cutting his body in 2. With a puff, Yi Shuyuan fell to the ground. Ho ho dash, the blood sprayed from his mouth. Yi Zhaoyuan's eyes widened, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I would rather. I am a loose cultivator. The words fall. Yi Shuyuan died of anger. Brother Xiong. Among the Yi family members, the Yi family cultivators were in grief. Lei Zhan saw this scene, and for some reason, the anger in his heart seemed to go away for a few minutes. Seeing this scene, the other cultivators of the Cangzhou allied forces were all shocked by the fierce temperament of this Yi Shuyuan cultivator, and all the anger in their hearts disappeared. At this moment, an inexplicable thought emerged from the hearts of everyone. Yi Wudao is Yi Wudao, Yi family cultivator is Yi family cultivator. They should not be confused. Yi Dao friendly means. In Yi Hongsheng's sea of consciousness, a voice sounded. It was Zhou Mingho's voice. However, if your Yi family relies on a dead man in the foundation building period, You want to take command of the defense battle of Cangzhou Xiancheng? I can only give it to fellow Taoist delusions. 2 words. Fellow Taoist Zhou, Cangzhou Xiancheng is my Yi family Xiancheng. Shouldn't my Yi family be in charge of this war? Yi Hongsheng did not give in an inch. Both know well what it means to have battlefield command in a war of this scale. It means that, whether the coalition army gets the hand or the Yi family gets the hand, the number of people who die on the battlefield will be much less. Zhou Mingho sneered. If Yi Wudao is here, your Yi family may still be qualified to fight for the command of this war. Now, what is your Yi family? Hear this. Yi Hongsheng turned his head and glanced at the 11 Zifu cultivators behind him, then looked at the 71 Zifu cultivators on the opposite side, as well as several Qianjiao on the Zifu Qianjiao list, only to let out a helpless sigh. He took a deep look at Zhou Mingho, then bowed deeply and pleaded, I hope fellow Taoist Zhou will take pity on my Yi family million cultivators. In the end, he handed over the command. Chapter 199. Cangzhou Xiancheng. Outside the 100 Zhonghai city wall, endless corpses attacked the defensive formation outside the city as if going crazy. Cangzhou Xiancheng's defense formation ranks as high as rank 5. Even if true monarch Yuan Ying came, he could stop him for a moment. In the face of the attack of these corpses, it is naturally no problem. But although the defensive formation is strong, it cannot keep defending all the time. After all, it consumes the spiritual energy of Cangzhou Xiancheng's spiritual veins. So many zombies besieged Xiancheng from all directions, and it continued, even if the spiritual veins of Cangzhou Xiancheng were as high as the 4th rank, they could not hold on. There was only one final result. Cangzhou Xiancheng was broken. Chen Daoxian was placed in the 43rd Defense Zone by the Cangzhou Allied Forces. This defense zone is located in the southern section of Cangzhou Xiancheng. The chief officer of the defense zone is someone else. It is Chen Daoxian's old acquaintance Yang Linyuan, the head of the Yang family. Chen Daoxian is Yang Linyuan's deputy. Faced with this arrangement, Chen Daoxian naturally wouldn't say much. Although he believes that his strength is far superior to Yang Linyuan, Zhou Mingho's judgment of his strength is still at the level of 4 years ago, which is comparable to the cultivator of the Zifu. Leading a large defense area alone, if the defense area is broken, the people in the entire Cangzhou Xiancheng will suffer. Zhou Mingho naturally did not dare to take risks. Let Yang Linyuan, a cultivator on the 2nd floor of the Purple Mansion, sit in command plus 2 deputies. In this way, the 43 defense zone will be foolproof. Deputy Commander Chan. Deputy Commander Chan. After some inspections, the soldiers on the city wall all bowed to him and saluted. Chen Daoxian returned the salute one by one and nodded to the soldiers. In addition to the defensive formation, the corpse group was still attacking frantically, causing ripples in the light curtain of the defensive formation. Everyone knows that when the defensive formation is put away, it will be the moment of battle between the two sides. As this moment draws near, everyone's breathing became heavy involuntarily. There is no way. The black pressure in front of the corpse tide that can't see the end. The pressure on the cultivators is too great. Even Chen Daoxian felt his scalp tingle when he saw the endless tide of corpses like a black ocean in front of him. Corpse tide. So horrible. This is not something that a mere Zifu or even a Jindan cultivator can solve. I'm afraid even if Yuaning Zhenjuan saw this scene, he would feel powerless to sigh, right? Chen Daoxian thought to himself. Master Commander. After inspecting the defense area, Chen Daoxian came to the temporary command post in the 43 defense area and bowed to Yang Linyuan. The subordinates have inspected all the defenses in the defense area, and the soldiers are all ready. Nephew Chen has worked hard. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Yang Linyuan immediately stood up from his seat, greeted him in 3 or 2 steps, and said with a smile, please sit, please sit. Let's greet each other. Yang Linyuan looked at Chen Daoxian and his granddaughter Yang Gongwan's 2 deputies, nodded and said, our only goal in this defensive battle is not to annihilate the enemy, but to resist the enemy's offensive. As long as the reinforcements from Qianyuan Jianzong arrive, it will be a victory. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian and Yang Gongwan looked at each other and frowned. Master Commander, will Qianyuan Jianzong send reinforcements? Yang Linyuan was stunned for a moment, and then he said firmly, yes. Definitely. After a pause, he explained. The previous idea of Qinyuan sword sect was to lure Shinjue Renren to take action. But Shinjue Renren is too tolerant and has been hiding behind the scenes. But this time is different. Once Cangzhou Xianqing is broken, the entire Cangzhou is in danger of being occupied, followed by Taizhou and Jingzhou. When things develop to that point, Qinyuan Jianzong will also feel a headache when he comes to clean up the mess. Therefore, Cangzhou Xianqing is the bottom line of Qinyuan sword sect, and they will never sit back and watch Cangzhou Xianqing fall. Hear this. Yang Gongwan, whose cultivation base has broken through to the first floor of the Purple Mansion, pouted and said, I'm afraid it has something to do with Yi Wudeo's base here. Ha ha. Yang Linyuan stroked his beard and smiled. Of course, that's part of the reason. As we all know, the suzerain faction and the elder faction of Qinyuan sword sect have always been at odds, but this time the extermination of the corpse group and the complete extermination of Shinjue Zhenren are probably highly unified opinions of the two factions. Inside the command post, Chen Daoxian listened to Yang Linyuan's words silently and remained silent. These are common sense things in the eyes of the big family, and he heard them all for the first time. He knew that Yang Linyuan and Yang Gongwan's words did not necessarily mean to point him. Sovereign faction, elder faction. Obviously, the interior of Qinyuan sword sect is not monolithic, but also has factions. In fact, this is also quite normal. Even in the previous life, there were disagreements, conflicts of interest and factions within each country. In this world, that's obviously the case too. It has only been 400 years since the Qinyuan Jianzong sect master succeeded. This time for true monarch Yuanning's lifespan of 3,000 years, and primordial spirit cultivator as high as 10,000 years of lifespan, although it is not a flick of a finger, it is indeed not a long time. The Qinyuan sword sect master can firmly hold the position of the sect master and lead the entire Wan Xinghai to defeat the Xianqing Dao League, which is already an outstanding ability. It is simply impossible for her to resolve all internal conflicts and build the entire Qinyuan sword sect like a piece of iron. After all, this is a world where great power is attributed to itself. The people of the Qinyuan sword sect elder faction are willing to honor the third elder. Can the Qinyuan sword sect master kill all the elders headed by the third elder? If you really want to do this, Qinyuan Jianzong will fall into civil war and split in an instant. Would dash a few people talking. A shrill alarm sounded throughout the immortal city of Cangzhou. It's time to withdraw the defensive formation, Daoxian. Gongwan, come with me. Yang Linyuan looked serious. Yes, Lord Commander. Chen Daoxian and Yang Gongwan followed closely behind. Outside Cangzhou Xianqing, it stopped with a shrill siren. The fifth order defense formation was slowly lifted, and as the defensive formation was withdrawn, the corpses outside were like hot water being poured into a frying pan, completely boiling. Roar! The roar that made the eardrums hurt came into Chen Daoxian's ears. The corpse group relied on the 100 Zhonghai city wall, and used the method of stacking arhats to fill in the height of the city wall little by little, ignoring that the bottom zombies had been crushed into flesh. 100 feet high city wall. Chen Daoxian didn't know how many corpses were needed to fill it up, and he didn't have the mind to count them. He only knew that the tide of corpses in front of him, trampling on the corpses of his companions, rushed towards the Cangzhou coalition forces. Sky. A group of flying zombies shrouded in cloudy clouds rushed towards the 43 defense zone. Time. The corpse group attacked the monks in the 43 defense zone in 2 ways. Kill. Yang Linyuan roared loudly, took the lead, and controlled the Feijian tide to chop the corpses over. The sword glow was 100 feet long, and a sword cut a huge gap in the corpse. I don't know how many zombies were killed by the sword, but soon, more zombies filled the gap and rushed towards the crowd. Don't be afraid to die. Endless. This terrifying pressure made some timid monks tremble. Chapter 200. In the face of this dazzling scene, Chen Daoxian's face was calm. After all, this is the first time he has participated in such a large-scale war. Looking at the black mass of corpses rushing towards him in front of him, Chen Daoxian's Danshan's true essence suddenly erupted, and above the sea of qi in the Dantian, a little star was like a substance, almost condensing into a star. Moment. The entire 43 defense zone was shrouded in a transparent rain curtain. Inside the rain curtain, sword energy turned into raindrops and rustled down. As soon as the corpse rushed into the rain curtain with a radius of nearly 10,000 feet, it was torn to shreds by the rain curtain transformed by the endless sword energy. In an instant, the corpse group in the 43 defense zone was almost emptied by Chan Daoxian alone. This? Yang Linyuan stared blankly at the scene in front of him, and could hardly believe his eyes. Lead the mighty. On the battlefield of the 43 defense zone, it was not just who shouted such a sentence. Immediately after, the words, lead the mighty, resounded throughout the battlefield. In the corpse, Sun Fu soon noticed the abnormality of the 43 defense zone. It's him. Sun Fu's golden pupils shrank slightly. Obviously, he recognized Chen Daoxian. Immediately, a grim smile appeared on his green face and fangs. I see how much real energy you have consumed. Say it. He waved his hand, and more corpses rushed towards the defense area where Chen Daoxian was. Even the pressure of the 42 defense zone and the 44 defense zone is light. The commander of the Zifu in these two defense zones actually had the time to observe the battle situation in the 43 defense zones with his spiritual sense. Following Sun Fu's instructions, the group of corpses coming towards the 43 defense zone was even more terrifying. Facing the group of corpses as deep as the sea, Chen Daoxian had no expression on his face, as if those killed by his sword energy were just grass and mustard. Although there were more corpses, they couldn't break into the rain curtain of sword energy constructed by Chen Daoxian. Including the group of corpses in the sky, they charged towards the rain screen countless times, but apart from being cut into pieces, they were of no use at all. Occasionally, there was a powerful late-stage foundation building zombie, relying on its strong defensive ability and recovery ability, forcibly rushed to within 100 feet of Chen Daoxian, and was chopped into pieces by a white mark. In the entire 43 defense zone, Chen Daoxian alone completely blocked the corpse group. Yang Gongwan looked at Chen Daoxian with great power. She couldn't believe her eyes. Ever since she gave up comprehending the sword intent and chose to break through the purple mansion, she thought that relying on her water spirit body, she would never be weaker than Chen Daoxian, who had not yet reached the middle stage of foundation establishment. But she didn't expect that Chen Daoxian's strength was far stronger than she imagined. Such strength, even a late-stage cultivator of the purple mansion might not be able to do it, right? Yang Gongwan thought to herself. Time passed little by little. Soon, an hour has passed. Such a high-strength maintenance of the sword qi rain curtain to resist the corpse group, even with Chen Daoxian's real yuan reserves, is somewhat insufficient. With the constant consumption of true yuan, Chen Daoxian's face finally turned pale. Far away, seeing Chen Daoxian's pale face, Sun Fu breathed a sigh of relief. Boy, the battlefield is not the place for you to be brave. If you want to resist the corpse group with your own strength, do you think you are a Jindan cultivator or Yuanying Xinjuan? With a sneer, Sun Fu stopped paying attention to Chen Daoxian. In his opinion, the true essence will be exhausted in just an hour, and whether Chen Daoxian can save his life in the next attack of the corpse is a matter of two things. Chen Daoxian's dantian is full of energy. A third-grade fortune-telling white lotus is quietly suspended, and above the third-grade fortune-telling white lotus, a bright starlight illuminates the entire dantian qi sea. The lotus of the third-grade good fortune. These 3 years, with the improvement of Chen Daoxian's weapon refining rank, he has promoted almost all of his magical tools. Among them, naturally also includes his natal magic tool, the White Lotus of Good Fortune. Originally, the second-grade fortune-telling White Lotus could only store about 3 times the true essence of the late-stage cultivator of foundation building, and it was promoted to the third-grade Good Fortune White Lotus, that is, after the third-order magic weapon. The ability of fortune-telling White Lotus to store true essence skyrocketed. After Chen Daoxian's test, his ability to store true yuan has only increased by 6 times. That is to say, in this third-grade Good Fortune White Lotus, at least 18 times the true essence of the late foundation building cultivator is stored. Coupled with the amount of real essence stored in Chen Daoxian's own dantian qi si, Chen Daoxian's amount of real essence has reached more than 19 times the original. In other words, at this level of consumption he can support 19 hours. Even It is far more than 19 hours. You must know that during the battle, Chen Daoxuan's true essence can also be continuously recovered. With his true essence recovery speed, Chen Daoxian can basically support him indefinitely if he eats another Huiyuan pill. Unless the spiritual energy inside Songzhou Xianqing is exhausted, he cannot recover his true essence. Soon. 10 hours passed. The rest of the zones were all at risk and only zones 42, 43, and 44 were the most secure. But if you look closely you will find it. The corpses in these 3 defense zones are all charging towards the 43 defense zone. The 42 defense zones and the 44 defense zones are almost reduced to the existence of soy sauce. The rest of the Zifu cultivators were all guarding against Chen Daoxuan's attack by the opposite Zifu corpse servants, affecting Chen Daoxuan's performance. After all, they couldn't last as long as Chen Daoxian in the group attack. For 10 hours Chen Daoxian maintained this posture motionless. Ahead, the rain curtain transformed by the sword energy did not stop for a moment. Outside the city walls of Songzhou, the countless tides of corpses were stopped by Chen Daoxian by himself, unable to take a step beyond the thunderous pool. Originally, with the heat of the war, Sun Fu had already forgotten Chen Daoxian, the fool who made big moves as soon as he came up, but a full 10 hours passed. He was stunned when he found that Chen Daoxian was still maintaining this offensive. How is it possible? Sun Fu murmured, how can someone in this world have such a terrifying reserve of true essence? Although I couldn't believe the scene in front of me, I saw Chen Daoxuan's comfortable appearance. How can there be a little bit of real essence exhausted? Sun Fu was not surprised when he said that he could hold on for another 10 hours. After a little induction, Sun Fu discovered that in just 10 hours, nearly 10 million zombies died at the hands of Chen Daoxian. This number has reached a tenth of the entire corpse tide. If it takes another 10 days and a half to go on like this corpse tide will be pacified by Chen Daoxian alone. Thinking of this, Sun Fu felt an absurd feeling in his heart. The corpse tide that made the entire Songzhou feel like a great enemy would be consumed by a mere foundation-building cultivator? Sun Fu only felt that he couldn't let out a breath in his heart, which was extremely uncomfortable. Withdraw! The order was issued, and the offensive of the corpse tide suddenly slowed down. All the corpses retreated in a forbidden manner, and not a single zombie was fighting. This is also the horror of the corpse tide. No disobedience to the controller's orders, which the cultivator army simply cannot do. Call! Seeing the black tide receding in front of him, Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Behind, Yang Linyuan and Yang Gongwan looked at him with shock and strangeness. Chen Daoxian turned his head, saw the faces of the two and frowned. What's wrong? Chapter 201. Chen, nephew Chen. Yang Linyuan thought about it for a long time, but couldn't come up with a better wording. You are? Yang Gongwan, who was on the side, didn't have so many scruples and couldn't help but ask, how did you do it? I only heard that Jiangxia's sword essence is stronger than Sun's true essence, but I have never heard that the reserve ratio. How many ordinary foundation establishment monks are there? She furrowed her eyebrows tightly. I'm afraid your real Yuan reserves are more than the mana of the late Zifu monks. Fairy Yang is very praised. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. It's not that I have a lot of real energy, but the sword intent I have learned. I am good at group attack and consume less real energy. Talking. He staggered and his face became pale. If the corpse doesn't retreat, I can't hold it anymore. Yes, is it? Yang Gongwan looked at him suspiciously. Chen Daoxian nodded sincerely. It's absolutely true. All right. Yang Gongwan put on an expression of trusting you temporarily. Compared with the innocence of his granddaughter, Yang Linyuan is much more shrewd. He didn't believe in the nonsense that Chen Daoxuan's comprehension of sword intent is good at group attack and consumes less real energy. If Chen Daoxian lasted for a few hours, it can be said that his sword intent consumes less real energy. But Chen Daoxian maintained this offensive for a full 10 hours. Not to mention a cultivator in the early stage of foundation establishment, it is estimated that the real energy of 10 cultivators in the early stage of foundation establishment will be exhausted. However, Chen Daoxian was still alive and kicking like no one else. If it wasn't for Yang Gongwan's repeated questioning, Chen Daoxuan's complexion would not have changed, and it was always as rosy as ever. Obviously, Chen Daoxian has his own secrets. It's just that this kind of secret others don't want to tell, he can't ask. He glanced at the defensive formation outside the city walls of Cangzhou Xiancheng. Yang Linyuan said with a smile, let's go to the headquarters hall together. Senior Yang, please go first. No, let's go together. Yang Linyuan didn't dare to take it, and hurriedly made a gesture of invitation. See. Chen Daoxian nodded and walked with him towards the headquarters hall. Yang Gongwan followed behind the two. Soon, the commanders and deputy commanders of a total of 97 defense zones in Cangzhou Xiancheng gathered together in the headquarters hall. Inside the headquarters hall, in the first place was the commander-in-chief of the Cangzhou coalition, Zhou Mingho. After changing his usual gentle temperament, Zhou Mingho's face was solemn at this time, but upon closer inspection, he would find that there was a faint hint of joy hidden under his solemn expression. Everyone. Zhou Mingho's voice resounded through the hall. We resisted the offensive of the corpse tide today. It turns out that the corpse tide is not as terrifying as everyone imagined. In addition to the number, the strength of a single zombie is not worth mentioning. Even the lowest chi-refining cultivator can easily strangle them. Zhou Mingho paused. In this battle alone, it is roughly estimated that the number of zombies killed in each defense zone exceeded 50 million. Boom! As soon as Zhou Mingho finished speaking, there was a violent discussion in the hall. So much. I didn't expect the corpse tide to be so vulnerable. Yeah, if that's the case, Cangzhou Xiancheng can be defended completely. There was a lot of discussion in the hall. A long time. Zhou Mingho pressed his hand down gently. The hall was quiet again. Especially our 43rd defense zone. The number of zombies killed in this zone alone is nearly 10 million. Zhou Mingho continued, therefore, we have enough reasons to believe that our Cangzhou coalition will be able to pacify this corpse mess. 43 defense zones? This is the defense zone led by fellow Taoist Yang, right? Seems like it. I didn't expect that after Yang Dai broke through to Zifu, his strength increased so much. The number of zombies killed in one defense area is more than the number of killings in our other 10 defense areas. Yes. Hearing the discussions of the people around him, Yang Linyuan, who was standing in the crowd, was sitting on pins and needles. He glanced at Chen Daoxian uncomfortably and said, Nephew Chen, do you want me to explain a few words? No need. Chen Daoxian smiled and shook his head. In such a fierce battlefield, only the monks who were close to the two defense zones could see the scene of his great power. As for the other defense areas, they were all busy fighting the corpse group with all their might, so they didn't care about the record of other defense areas. Encourage everyone to redistribute some materials. The commanders of each defense zone slowly withdrew from the hall. Nephew Chen, please stay. Just when Chen Daoxian raised his leg and was about to leave, Zhou Mingho stopped him. Senior Zhou. Seeing everyone leave, Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. My nephew. Zhou Mingho took 2 steps forward, grabbed Chen Daoxuan's right hand, and said excitedly, I didn't expect that a genius swordsman like you would emerge from my Guang'an residence. Chen Daoxian quickly cupped his hands and said humbly, Senior Zhou is wrong. I just happen to understand that the sword intent is good at group attack. It is very effective against these low-level zombies, but against high-level zombie groups, the effect is limited. I see. Zhou Mingho nodded knowingly. But now the low-level corpse group is troublesome. Hundreds of millions of corpse groups. Even if we have more than 100 Zifu monks, we can't resist them all. Nephew Chen. Do you understand what I mean? Senior Zhou means. I want you to be a firefighter for this war. Firefighter. Chen Daoxian probably knew Zhou Mingho's intentions, but he still asked, I don't know what Senior Zhou is referring to. Although you are in the 43 defense zone, and the corpse group can't cross the city wall one step, the other defense zones are still a little precarious in this defensive battle, and they are almost broken by the corpse group. I want you to take into account the entire defense line of Cangzhou Xiancheng, and support all defense areas at any time. This? Chen Daoxian looked hesitant. Don't worry. I will send someone to ensure your safety. You can only be responsible for clearing the low-level corpse. Say it. Zhou Mubai on the side smiled and said, I don't know if I'm here to be Brother Chen's bodyguard. Can you rest assured? Chen Daoxian glanced at Zhou Mubai and said with a smile, Brother Zhou guards, I am naturally relieved. After speaking, he turned to look at Zhou Mingho, Senior Zhou. Do you mean that Brother Zhou, and I will set up a special battlefield rescue team, ready to intervene at any time to break the defense area and relieve the pressure on these defense areas? Right. Zhou Mingho nodded. In order to prevent the corps from sending top-level Zifu Corps servants to attack you, I will let Mubai guard your safety so that you can let go. Hear this. Chen Daoxian finally understood what Zhou Mingho meant. Obviously, his performance in Defense Zone 43 today amazed Zhou Mingho, and gave him the idea of being able to defend Songzhou Xiancheng. Originally, I thought that no matter what we did, our hope of defending Songzhou Immortal City was very slim. But in today's battle we wiped out 50 million corpses from the enemy. As long as you fight like this 10 more times, the corpse group will naturally be wiped out. And nephew Chan Xian, you are the biggest variable in our battle. Whether it was me or the enemy, I never imagined that you would have such a terrifying means of group attack. Chapter 202. After the war. Treat wounded soldiers, care for fallen monks, burn corpses, and be careful not to turn into zombies again after being attacked by evil spirits. In each defense zone, these works are being carried out in an orderly manner. Although more than 50 million zombies were wiped out in this battle, the number of cultivators lost was as high as nearly 100,000. Although the Songzhou coalition had a total of several million, most of the hundreds of thousands were elites in the late stage of qi refining and foundation building. Can be said. This battle also left the entire Songzhou coalition devastated. Of course, among all the defense zones, the least damaged is the 43 defense zone with 0 casualties. The monks in the 43 defense zone watched Chen Daoxian perform alone for 10 hours. As a result, the pressure of the 2 defense zones was greatly reduced because of the existence of Chen Daoxian, and there were very few cultivators who were damaged. Therefore, the monks in these 3 defense zones were very grateful to Chen Daoxian. Brother Zhou, I'm just restoring true essence. You don't have to follow me all the time. Seeing Zhou Mubai following him, Chen Daoxian said helplessly. That won't do. Zhou Mubai shook his head with a smile. Before this battle is over, I will be your personal bodyguard. Anyone who wants to move you must step over my corpse. You restore yours, and I will protect the law for you. Seeing him like this, Chen Daoxian cupped his hands with a wry smile. Brother Lao Zhou, you are welcome. Step into a cave house built by the spirit eye of the Lord of Songzhou Xiancheng. Chen Daoxian raced against time to recover his true essence. In this battle, although he showed great power in front of everyone, it did not mean that his true essence was really so strong. Chen Daoxian relied on his special natal magic weapon, the 3rd-grade fortune-telling White Lotus. Up to 10 hours of consumption. The 3rd-grade Good Fortune White Lotus probably consumed less than 1/5 of the reserved true essence, and 4/5 remained. In other words, in a battle of this intensity, Chen Daoxian could last 5 days and 5 nights at most. If you take Huiyuan Dan, it will last longer. That is to say, if it is exhausted, the corpse group is really not enough for Chen Daoxian. After all, the opponent of the corpse group is not Chen Daoxian alone, but also the huge Songzhou coalition. If Chen Daoxian maintains the rain screen sword energy for 5 days and 5 nights, it is roughly estimated that at least nearly 100 million corpses can be killed. With such a terrifying killing effect, almost one person can top 20 or 30 cultivators in the defense zone. Sword cultivators like Zhou Mubai and Zhang Xianling, including other cultivators of the Purple House, can also kill such a large area. But it can't be as durable as Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian's Siyu sword intent was good at group attack. He didn't actually deceive Yang Linyuan. The real energy consumed by his sword energy rain curtain was much lower than that of other monks using large-scale spells. Coupled with his natal magic weapon, the 3rd-grade Good Fortune White Lotus, it caused such a terrifying record. Without one of these 2 conditions, Chen Daoxian could not achieve the level he is today. Inside the cave, the rich and pure aura was quickly refined by Chen Daoxian, and then quickly stored in the 3rd-grade fortune-telling White Lotus. In the center of the Dantian Qi Sea, a white lotus flower was quietly suspended. With the infusion of true essence, this lotus flower emits a gleaming white light, which illuminates Chen Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si even brighter, and even the stars above are hidden. Time passed little by little. Outside Songzhou Xiancheng, the corpses gathered again. Obviously, they are not prepared to give the monk time to recover. During the time when the troops were withdrawing, their commanders had already figured out how to deal with the variable Chen Daoxian. Southwest waters of Wuxia. A spirit boat with a verdant appearance quickly crossed the sky like a stream of light. On the spirit boat, a female nun with a sword in her left hand stood quietly on the deck, staring straight ahead. This female nun was tall and slender, wearing a light cyan gauze, her face was cold and glam, and there was a hint of sharpness in her beautiful eyes. "Sister." Behind him, a maid in a goose yellow gauze whispered, "Why do you want to take the job of bait? With your relationship with the sect master you can." Before she could finish speaking, the sharp color in the eyes of the lady in Xingyi faded, and she said softly, "The corpse chaos in Songzhou is getting worse and worse. If we can't get rid of the old demon Shunjua earlier, I'm afraid the corpse chaos will bring disaster to Jingzhou and Taizhou. During this period, how many innocent mortals and monks should have died?" Speaking of this, the female cultivator in Xingyi sighed. "Senior sister, you are so kind. But it's a pity that the disciples in the sect always mistakenly think that you have too much murderous intentions and are not suitable for the position of the young sect master." The female nun in the goose yellow gauze seemed to be holding an injustice for the blue-clothed nun. "The people I kill are all people who deserve to be killed. Naturally, there is no reason to hesitate." The woman in Xingyi looked firm. "Besides, why should I care about other people's opinions about what I do?" "Sister." "Okay, don't say these spoilers." The female cultivator in green clothes grabbed the jade hand of the female cultivator in the goose yellow gauze and said with a smile, "Do you remember what I told you before? Do not worry." Hearing this, the goose yellow gauze female cultivator patted her small chest and assured. Seemingly not at ease, the female cultivator in Xingyi ordered again. It wasn't until the goose yellow gauze woman became impatient, and the blue-clothed woman gave up. "Senior sister, I heard that the old demon Gaju is extremely fierce. Back then there was a true emperor nascent soul in the sect who fell into his hands. If you use you as a bait, in case the master of Zhenhai Palace misses, you, Jingxian, worry about it." The female cultivator in Xingyi nodded her forehead. "I'm more worried that Gaju old demon won't make a move than the younger uncle misses. No way with your purple mansion's perfect cultivation, beheading all his subordinates. And he won't shoot. This is too bearable. I can't bear it. How can I live in a cave in a secret realm for 400 years? When the female cultivator Qingyi said this, she also admired Gaju old demon's endurance. It is indeed a skill to be able to nest in a small cave for 400 years without moving the nest. Ask herself, she can't do it herself. This verdant spirit boat is 10 times faster than the Zhou family's spirit void battleship. Few days. Songzhou was faintly watching. Songzhou Xiancheng. Chen Daoxian. Don't run if you can. Sky. Sun Fu screamed in anger. In the past 5 days, Chen Daoxian was like a cunning loach. Whenever the defense area was in danger, he flew to the defense area in an instant, and a rain curtain of sword energy shrouded nearly 10,000 feet. Kill the corpse group, and instantly turn the crumbling defense zone into impregnable. 5 full days down. Sun Fu took a group of late-stage corpse servants in the Zifu to look for the trace of Chen Daoxian all day long, wanting to play the decapitation tactics. However, Chen Daoxian was protected by Zhou Mubai, and there were only a few late-stage corpse servants in the Purple Mansion, and Chen Daoxian could not be helped at all. In addition, each defense zone has one or several Zifu cultivators in charge. The other party resisted and procrastinated casually, and Chen Daoxian disappeared without a trace. Just under this kind of frenzied killing, the corpse tide gathered in Songzhou Xiancheng decreased visibly to the naked eye. When Fairy Qi Yao arrived, there were only tens of millions of corpses trapped outside Songzhou Xiancheng. Compared with the scene that covered the sky and the sun 5 days ago, it was a world of difference. Senior sister, with this corpse tide, Yi Wudao actually ran away? The goose yellow gauze female cultivator looked at the corpse tide outside Songzhou Xiancheng. A little unbelievable. The scene in front of you, no matter how you look at it, is that the Songzhou allied forces are fighting against the corpse tide. This scene is simply a magnified version of the battle between the East Defense Zone of Guang'an Prefecture and the Lianhua Island Corps Group. Hearing the doubts of the junior sister, Fairy Qi Yao took a closer look and finally found the reason. Chun Daoxian, don't run if you have something. We are fighting in an upright manner. Don't run. Sun Fu roared in exasperation. See this scene. Fairy Qi Yao was embarrassed to find that her bait job seemed to be robbed by an unfamiliar sword repairer. Chapter 203. Obviously, not only Qi Yao himself, but also the female cultivator wearing a goose yellow gauze next to him discovered this scene. Inside Songzhou Xiancheng, under the rain curtain of sword qi, the corpses were harvested and piled up in the open space outside Songzhou Xiancheng. The low-level monks who made soy sauce released fire attribute spells to burn the wreckage to improve Chan Daoxuan's killing efficiency. Senior sister, this sword repairer seems to have robbed you of your life. The goose yellow gauze woman pointed at Chan Daoxian, who showed great power on the city wall of Songzhou Xiancheng, and muttered, I know. Fairy Qi Yao and Xingyi said indifferently. She, who is proficient in kendo, looked at the scene in front of her and said with a frown, it is the Siyu Jiani and the Water Xing Jiani, but according to the records in the Zhongmen classics, although the Siyu Jiani is good at group attack, it is also there won't be so much power, especially its durability. As expected of the true disciple of Qianyuan sword sect, Qi Yao discovered the problem in less than a single stick of incense. The rain curtain of sword energy released by Chan Daoxian was too wide and lasted for too long, which was completely unreasonable. The only explanation is that the strength of this person's consciousness and the reserves of true essence far exceed the normal level of a foundation-building cultivator. Chan Daoxian did not expect it. Actually, someone only observed his full strength as a stick of incense time, and then felt his true strength. Sister, what should we do now? Watch it change. Qi Yao thought for a while. Songzhou Xiancheng. In the past 5 days, Sun Fu was almost exhausted by Chan Daoxuan's sloppy play. What made it even more desperate was that the number of corpses was almost exhausted under the double consumption of the Songzhou allied forces and Chan Daoxian. To know, the huge corpse group was one of the biggest reasons for him to dare to gallop in Songzhou. Unexpectedly, now this reliance has been abolished by a mere foundation-building cultivator. Even if this foundation establishment cultivator is a sword cultivator, his real strength is comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator. Chun Daoxian. Sun Fu finally felt the anger of his younger brother when he faced him. Obviously this person can be easily pinched to death by him, but the short-distance escape speed of the other party is not only strange but also extremely fast. In addition to Zhou Mubai's personal support, even if Sun Fu assembled 9 late-stage corpse servants of the Purple Mansion, there was nothing he could do with Chan Daoxian. But the 10 late-stage battle strength of Zifu is already the greatest strength that Sun Fu can draw. Although the Zifu side of the corpse group has more combat power, a single Zifu corpse servant is not an opponent of the Zifu cultivator. The corpse servants of the Zifu can compete with the cultivators of the Zifu of the human race, relying on the endless number of corpses, which drags down the energy of the cultivators of the Zifu of the human race. Now the number of corpses is getting smaller and smaller. The corpse servants of the Zifu are unable to deal with the cultivators of the Zifu in various defense areas, let alone being dispatched by Sun Fu. If they are recruited again, the corpse group will be completely defeated. Stop! Stop chasing! Although he saw Chan Daoxian slaughtering their corpses, Sun Fu knew. Follow up and the result is the same. For today's plan we must not be dragged by the nose again. Think of this. Sun Fu searched for a weak defense area with only the initial cultivation base of Zifu, and led 9 late-stage corpses of Zifu to kill the defense area together. 37 defense zones. An early Zifu commander in Jinanfu, watching 10 late Zifu zombies kill him, immediately broke into a cold sweat. 37 defense zone for help. After shouting at the communication array he carried with him, he immediately raised the subformation of Songzhou Xiancheng. This subarray method is based on the 5th-order mountain protection formation of Songzhou Xiancheng. Every defense zone in Songzhou Xiancheng is equipped with this formation. Of course, in terms of defensive ability, this subarray method cannot be compared with the 5th-order mountain protection formation in Songzhou Xiancheng. But compared with the general fourth-order array method, it is not weak at all. Boom! 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 A sound of hammering, bombarded on the transparent defensive light curtain of the subarray method, with starting point ripples. The 10 zombies in the late period of Zifu, even Jindan Jinren, would not dare to let them continue to attack. How can a subarray that is comparable to a fourth-order defensive array be able to resist it all the time? Just half a cup of tea. This subarray method is in jeopardy, and it looks like it will be broken at any time. The other side. Chen Daoxian, whose consciousness was covering the entire Cangzhou immortal city at any time, turned his head and frowned. Brother Zhou, now all the defense zones can't be recruited, and you are the only one to solve the siege of the 37th defense zone. As soon as his consciousness was swept away, Zhou Mubai discovered the embarrassment of the 37th defense zone. But hear you. Don't worry, as long as Sun Fuss group of late-stage Zifu zombies don't come to trouble me. Even if the other Zifu zombies can't be beaten, I still have the confidence to escape. Besides, there are also our Zifu cultivators in each defense area to cover me. I'll be fine here. Heard. Zhou Mubai, who waited, nodded. If the 37th defense zone is broken, it will definitely be a heavy blow to the current good situation. Even if you win in the end, you will lose a lot. Zhou Mubai naturally didn't want to see this. Okay, Brother Chun, be careful. After Zhou Mubai finished speaking, a flash of light flashed, and he went to support the 37th defense area. Just when Zhou Mubai went to support him, Fairy Qi Yao, who had been on the sidelines of the battle, also nodded and said, "Let's go, it's our turn to take action." Okay. After watching for so long, it was finally time to make a move. The goose yellow gauze girl's pretty face was full of eager expressions. There are 3 Zifu sword cultivators, and 2 of them are late Zifu sword cultivators. As soon as he made his move, he beheaded 3 late-stage corpse servants of Zifu on the spot. 37 defense zones. Sun Fu saw that his subordinates were beheaded and killed 3 in a single encounter, and his expression changed immediately, and then he laughed. Jejia, your Qinyuan sword sect really has left behind. Sun Fuyin smiled, as if the one who just died was not his subordinate at all. The masters of the 2 late-stage Zifu sword cultivators really expected everything. However, you think that the 2 Zifu sword cultivators will be able to win the battle steadily. Are we? So far, do you still have any cards? Zhou Mubai looked at the other party, but his consciousness searched the void carefully, trying to find the backhand under Sun Fubu. What cards can they have? Qi Yao said coldly. It's just the bereaved dog of Shinju Alaoma. Humph. When Sun Fu heard Qi Yao insulting his master, his face was grim, but there was a flash of pleasure in his eyes. Zhou Mubai, you don't have to look for it, my master will not come. Your little tricks, even I can't hide it, and you still want to lure my master into being fooled? Ridiculous. Shunju old demon is still as greedy for life and fear of death as ever. Fairy Qi Yao nodded. Naturally, if you are greedy for life and fear death. If you are not greedy for life and fear death, how can you hide for 400 years, and only dare to send you 2 wastes out to stir up the situation? Yes. Sun Fu smiled coldly. That's not necessarily true. The other side. Chan Daoxuan sword Qi Rain curtain shrouded the entire 53 defense area, killing the corpses that rushed from the 53 defense area to the ground, and the army was defeated. After 5 days, Chan Daoxian had already accumulated considerable experience in the abuse of vegetables. He is confident that in Wan Xinghai, there should be no one more experienced than him when it comes to slaughtering low-level monks. After all, even the Golden Core cultivator, or even the true monarch Yuan Ying will not be like him. In just 5 days, almost all of them are killing low-level corpses. Although the strength of the zombies in the corpse group is much lower than that of the monks in the Qi refining period, there are also a large number of high-level zombies whose strength is comparable to the monks in the Qi refining period and even the foundation building period. But when Chen Daoxian killed it, there was no difference, at most it took a little more effort. In other words, replacing these zombies with monks in the Qi refining stage and foundation building stage, who would not form a battle against the enemy, would not make much difference to Chen Daoxian. Of course, the foundation building cultivators here refer to those cultivators who do not wear spiritual armor. The base building cultivator was wearing a second-tier high-grade spirit armor, and Chen Daoxuan's sword energy rain curtain could not break through the opponent's defense at all. Chen Daoxian was distracted, while maintaining the sword chi rain curtain to kill the enemy, while on the other hand, he used his divine sense to observe the battlefield in the 37th defense zone. When he heard Sun Fu's sentence, "That's not necessarily," my heart suddenly tightened. "What are you looking at?" An extremely terrifying voice sounded behind Chen Daoxian, causing him to sweat coldly. He turned around slowly. A silver-haired old man stood behind him. Silver hair, golden blood, jade bones all over the body Dao Yun circulates. It seems that he himself is the interpretation of Dao, the collection of Dao. You are the body of a fairy. Chen Daoxian had such a word in his heart. However, how is it possible? How could there be immortals in this world? The last recorded true immortal of Mahayana, who ascended to the upper realm in this world, was also a matter of hundreds of thousands of years ago. Who I am? The silver-haired old man smiled and said, "Isn't it just to lure me out? Now here I am. Why are you putting on such an expression again?" God. Absolute. True. Human. Chen Daoxian looked directly into his eyes and said word by word, "It's you, idiot." The silver-haired old man smiled. He raised his legs and walked towards Chen Daoxian step by step. 53 Defense Zone. The entire defense zone, up to the cultivator of Zifu, down to the cultivator of the chi refining stage, all stood there dumbfounded, motionless, as if someone had captured their souls. Chen Daoxuan's heart is beating like a drum, and he has never felt so close to death for a moment. This is your supernatural power to become famous, the divine light of the soul? Oh. The silver-haired old man paused in his footsteps and laughed. I can't believe that in the past so many years, there are still people who remember this old man's famous stunt. Good. Really good. Ha ha ha. Half an hour. Shinjue Zhenren stopped laughing and looked at Chen Daoxian. Since you recognize it, in order to reward you, let you die under the divine light, and it will not waste your life. Okay. Chen Daoxian nodded. I want to see if Ding Soul Divine Light has the power as rumored. It is said that Ding Soul Divine Light can even hold the true monarch nascent soul, but I don't believe it. True monarch Yuanying? The silver-haired old man sneered. True monarch Yuanying is a piece of shit. Say it. A ray of divine light shot out from the void and went straight to Chen Daoxuan's face. Dingpa Shengguang instantly tore apart Chen Daoxuan's sea of consciousness. Know the sea. The golden scriptures sit in it, as if the eternal towering existence. The divine light shone into the sea of consciousness, but did not touch the divine soul. The golden scripture shook slightly, and the divine light was absorbed by the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, and not even a wave was raised. The real person Shenjue watched Chen Daoxian being fixed on the spot by Dingpa Shengguang, and shook his head with a smile. Jianxiu? Haha, that's all. Say it. With a palm of his hand, he slashed down according to Chen Daoxuan's Tianling cover. Who knows? Chen Daoxian, who was originally standing still, flashed and disappeared in place in an instant. Become a sword light. The incarnation of the sword light that remained on the spot was instantly torn to shreds by the silver-haired old man with the palm of his hand. Seeing that Chen Daoxian actually broke free from his divine light, Shin Juezhen was completely shocked. Immediately, he narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, "Interesting, really interesting. I didn't expect you to have such a rare divine soul defense magic weapon." After speaking, he raised his hand, ready to end Chen Daoxian completely. But the next moment, there was a ripple in the space. I saw a hand as delicate as white jade stretched out from the ripples in the space and grabbed the right hand raised by Shinjue Zhenren. Little mouse, I finally caught you. As the space ripples disappeared, a young figure appeared in front of everyone. This person is none other than the hall master of Zhenhai Palace, Qin Zhan. Shen Juezhen turned his head in horror. An extremely young Taoist dressed in a blue Taoist robe with Taoist on his head, his eyes full of pride, the corners of his mouth grinned as if mocking him. You are. I'm your grandpa. Say it. A punch hit the corner of Shenju Zhenren's mouth. It knocked him thousands of feet away. After flying thousands of miles away, Shinjue Zhenren seemed to have hit an invisible barrier and was thrown away. Embarrassed, he stood up in the void. Immortal Shenjue touched the space barrier behind him in disbelief. and looked at the hall master of Zhenhai Palace with a shocked expression. Space cage. TSK, I still have some eyesight to see. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace walked towards him step by step. Clearly the distance between the two was thousands of meters, but he only took 3 steps before appearing in front of Shenzhou Zhenren. It seems that the inheritance of immortals you have obtained is really remarkable. Humph! Shenzhou Zhenren snorted coldly. Do you know what I hate most about your Qingyuan sword sect? Which point? It's that you always put on a high posture. It's disgusting. There was a hint of ruthlessness in the eyes of Shenzhou. They are all monks. Who is more noble than the other? Say it. Immortal Shenzhou instantly disappeared in place, and the next second, a fist with golden light slammed directly into the face of the hall master of Zhenhai Palace. Faced with a punch that ripped the space apart, the hall master of Zhenhai Palace stretched out his jade-like palm and gently clenched the fist. The body of an immortal, the body of immortality. Unfortunately, you can't exert 1/1000th of the power of this body. Talking. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace stretched out a finger and tapped it lightly. The space in front of him suddenly collapsed. Shenzhou Zhenren became smaller and smaller in front of him, and finally, a transparent bead the size of a glass bead was suspended in the palm of the Zhenhai Hall's master. If you look closely, you will find that inside this glass bead, there is a small man the size of a fingernail locked inside. Chapter Topher. Looking at the transparent bead in the palm of his hand, the hall master of Zhenhai Palace put it back into his sleeve. Then he raised his head and glanced at the tragic battlefield in Songzhou Xiancheng. God, you old demon, it's not as good as a real beast. Sigh. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace pointed his finger again. Within a radius of hundreds of miles, the space ripples like water ripples. This space ripple seems to be able to distinguish between the enemy, and when it passes by the cultivator, it does not hurt at all. When passing the surging corpses, the other party fell to the ground one after another, completely turning into corpses. Looking down from the sky, the corpse group collapsed to the ground as if they were harvesting wheat. The scene was so shocking that the Zhangzhou cultivator who was fighting the corpse group was stunned. Corpses present. Except for the 6 corpse servants of the late Zifu led by Sun Fu in the 37th Defense Area, who were still precariously under the siege of Zhoumubai and other Jianxiu, none of them survived. 1,000 feet away, Chen Daoxian looked at the cyan figure standing proudly in the sky in shock, and his heart was not only shocked, but also shocked. There really are such powerful people in this world. I just don't know what the cultivator in front of me is, true monarch Yuaning? Or the great power of Yuanshan. After killing tens of millions of corpses with one finger, the hall master of Zhenhai Palace turned his head, glanced at Chen Daoxian and smiled at him. Then he turned his attention to the direction of the 37th defense zone. Chen Daoxian swallowed and spit. He didn't care about the changes in the consciousness sea. He flew to the hall master of Zhenhai Palace and said, Junior Guang'an House cultivator Chen Daoxian, I have seen Senior. After speaking, he lowered his head, not daring to look at the other party's face. Songzhou actually has a new sword repairer. It's gratifying. The voice of the hall master of Zhenhai Palace came into Chen Daoxian's ears. Thanks to you for attracting the old demon god Ju this time. Saying that, a trace of regret flashed on the face of the Zhenhai Hall's master. Unfortunately, what I caught was only a clone of the god Ju old demon, not his body. Separate. Chen Daoxian raised his head, his face full of disbelief. After wasting so much effort and sacrificing so many people, what was caught was only a clone of the real god. This shit. Chen Daoxian cursed in his heart. Seemingly seeing what Chen Daoxian was thinking, the hall master of Zhenhai Hall shook his head. Don't underestimate this avatar. If I'm not mistaken, it is the greatest support of God Ju old demon. The biggest reliance? Chen Daoxian looked puzzled. Right, the hall master of Zhenhai Hall nodded. You should have heard that the immortal Shenzhou received an inheritance from an immortal, right? I heard, don't you? Chen Daoxian immediately thought of the old man he had just seen. Could it be that the old man is the remains of the immortal? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but scolded. God Ju old demon really is a beast. Beast indeed, the hall master of Zhenhai Hall nodded. Not only is he extremely cruel to mortals, but he also uses the teacher's body to sacrifice his clones. The entire Wuxia is the only one. Chen Daoxuan's consciousness swept away, and suddenly found that the battle in the 37th defense zone was not over yet. So he bowed his hands to the main hall of Zhenhai Palace. "Senior, I'll go help now, heard." The hall master of Zhenhai Palace nodded and said with a smile, "Go ahead." "Yes, say it." Chen Daoxuan's light flashed, and his figure quickly appeared in the 37th defense area. Now, the low-level monks in the entire 37 defense zone are all hiding in the sub-defense formation. The monks above the Purple Mansion all surrounded the 37th defense zone. Sun Fu and the 6 Zifu monks under him were all surrounded by a group of Zifu monks. Looking at the powerful Zifu monks in the void, Sun Fu knew that today was his doom. Now, he happened to see Chen Daoxian appearing not far from him again. Sun Fu's golden pupils shrank slightly, and he stretched out his dark paws pointing at Chen Daoxian. "Chen Daoxian, have the ability, you and I are fighting in a grand manner." Chen Daoxian ignored Sun Fu's aggressive generals, and said with his arms around him, "You are a late-stage Zifu man, and you are fighting a foundation-building early stage with me. Can you be dignified and upright?" "I don't believe it." Sun Fu looked at everyone calmly. "Don't you want to know the location of my master Dong Tian?" The voice just fell. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Sun Fu. "It is not the master of Zhenhai Palace, and who is it? Say." The master of Zhenhai Palace looked at it coldly. "Where is the old devil god?" Feeling the terrifying coercion of the hall master of Zhenhai Palace, Sun Fu only felt that it became difficult to open his mouth. Slightly restraining the pressure on his body, the hall master of Zhenhai Palace said, "As long as you speak out, I promise not to kill you." "Don't kill me?" Sun Fuin laughed. "Continue on Jianzong endure an uncontrolled Zifu zombie raging in Wuxia?" The hall master of Zhenhai Palace was silent. "Half an hour." He said slowly, "I can put you in the realm of the Xianqing Dao League." Hearing this, Sun Fu was slightly taken aback, but he still shook his head. "Forget it, I don't believe you." After speaking, he turned to look at Chen Daoxian. "How about it, as long as you and I have a fight, I will tell you the location of my master." At this time, everyone focused their attention on Chen Daoxian. This battle, almost all the monks in Songzhou knew Chen Daoxian, a new sword cultivator in Songzhou. Can be said, Chen Daoxian almost single-handedly supported the crumbling situation in Songzhou Xiancheng. After all, when it comes to the speed of killing low-level corpses, Jindan cultivators may have to bow down. Seeing that everyone turned their attention to himself, Chen Daoxian nodded and said solemnly, "Okay, since you want to fight me, I will satisfy you." The reason why he has such confidence is because the hall master of Zhenhai Palace transmitted his voice to him just now and will absolutely guarantee his safety. Plus, a few years ago he played against Sun Fu's younger brother Sun Mang. With the self-created escape technique of incarnation of Jianguang, Chen Daoxian turned Sun Mang around. After so many years, Chen Daoxuan's strength has increased greatly. Even if he is not Sun Fu's opponent, he will never encounter danger. Think of this. He agreed to the request of the other party. After all, if Sun Fu refused to reveal the location of Shenzhou Zhenren, I am afraid that no one in this world would know where Shenzhou Zhenren's cave is. As for using the soul-searching secret technique to search Sun Fu's soul, it would only be possible for the zombie to have a soul. Therefore, this may be the only way for people to know where God is. Whether it is for the safety of the family or the stability of Songzhou in the future, Chen Daoxian must stand up. He stood up today, and all his colleagues in Songzhou, including the hall master of Zhenhai Palace, owe him a favor. With such a disparity in cultivation, Chen Daoxian still dared to stand up, and the hall master of Zhenhai Palace couldn't help but think of him higher. Soon, everyone gave up a vast space for Chen Daoxian and Sun Fu. As for Sun Fu's 6 corpse servants, they were wiped out by the master of Zhenhai Palace. Standing out of thin air, Chen Daoxian looked at Sun Fu thousands of feet away. Sun Fu also looked at him. For some reason, Chen Daoxian couldn't see any fighting intent in Sun Fu's eyes. Instead, he had a calm look. Seeing this kind of look, Chen Daoxian was slightly heartbroken. Why does he feel calm? Seemingly seeing Chen Daoxuan's doubts, Sun Fu said, "Chen Daoxian, aren't you curious? Where has my brother gone? What? Sudden. Chun Daoxuan's heart tightened suddenly. Sun Fu's younger brother. The younger brother who has always been inseparable with him. It seems that in the process of the corpse tide attacking Songzhou Xiancheng, he did not see his younger brother Sun Meng. If you beat me fast enough, you might be able to collect corpses for your Chun family. Jia Jia. Sun Fu laughed wantonly. When Chun Daoxian heard this, his murderous intent skyrocketed. After these days of fighting and constantly beheading corpses, the murderous aura accumulated by Chun Daoxian is no weaker than any soldier on the front line of Izumo. Die! Chun Daoxuan's sword turned into a star, and immediately slashed towards Sun Meng's dantian. The rainbow lightsaber is lightning fast. The star rays penetrated the sky, hitting Sun Fu's dantian directly. Boom! In the nick of time, Sun Fu slashed the flying rainbow lightsaber with one claw. Looking at the buzzing rainbow lightsaber, Sun Fu glanced at his two severed fingers, nodded and said, "Your strength has improved so fast, just a few years. Before, you couldn't even break my brother's defense, but now you can actually hurt me, not bad." Chun Daoxian said nothing. The stars fell like meteors one after another, bombarding Sun Fu's dantian. Sun Fu blocked left and right, constantly flying the flying sword. But Chun Daoxian couldn't stand the constant stars. When everyone saw this scene, they were all stunned. A cultivator in the early stage of foundation building actually pressed the zombies in the late stage of Zifu to fight. Who can believe it? Although everyone can see it. With Sun Fu's strength, as long as Chun Daoxian is caught, Chun Daoxian will be killed on the spot. But Sun Fu just couldn't do it. The power of Chun Daoxuan's flying sword can already break Sun Fu's defense. If he ignores it and is broken by Chun Daoxuan's sword, his strength will be greatly damaged in an instant. At that time, Sun Fu couldn't even stop Chun Daoxuan's flying sword, and he who was already at a disadvantage would definitely lose. The Goose Yellow Gauze female cultivator who was watching the battle looked at Chun Daoxian in horror, looked at Fairy Qiyao beside her, and said, "Senior sister, this person is too enchanting." In the early stage of foundation building, he pressed against Zifu in the later stage. Fairy Qiyao thought for a while, then shook her head and said, "Speaking of this late-stage Zifu zombie, its strength is far from that of a normal late-stage Zifu cultivator. If it is said that this Songzhou sword cultivator is using 1 point of strength to exert great power, then this Zifu zombie is to use 10 points of power to exert 2 or 3 points of power. The gap is too big." Fairy Qiyao shook her head. Zhou Mubai looked at the two who were fighting in the void, and his face was full of shock, because he found that Chun Daoxian seemed to have slightly surpassed his sword cultivator on the 3rd floor of the Purple Mansion in terms of attainments in swordsmanship. With his 3rd-layer foundation building cultivation, he surpassed him, a 3rd-layer sword cultivator in the Purple Mansion, in the realm of Kendo. Zhou Mubai understood what this meant. This means that Chun Daoxuan's Kendo talent is far beyond his imagination. "No wonder you choose to comprehend the sword intent of water travel," Zhou Mubai muttered. In the void, Sun Fu also seemed to see his own weakness. No, if it goes on like this, he will slowly kill him. It glanced at Chun Daoxian, and once again slashed the flying sword with one claw. The broken claw on the left hand just grew back. In front of you, Chun Daoxian completely fell into a state of berserk regardless. The stars fell like meteors one after another endlessly. The 3 flying swords seemed to form an endless star shower. "What?" Sun Fu roared, protecting Dantian with his arms, and rushed towards Chun Daoxian. But before he could reach a few dozen feet, he was bombarded by Chun Daoxuan's star shower and kept going backwards. Can't beat it. Everyone found out that Sun Fu, the late-stage zombie of my Zifu, really couldn't beat Chun Daoxian. Although the battle between the two was not a one-sided instant kill, the scale of victory was also firmly tilted towards Chun Daoxian. Off the field, the master of Zhenhai Palace nodded slightly. "Have you touched the 3rd level of sword intent, the realm of transforming stars?" Boom! 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 The bombardment became more and more intensive, and in the end, Sun Fu's recovery speed gradually couldn't keep up with Chun Daoxuan's attack speed. Puff! The star pierced Sun Fu's abdomen and pierced his corpse pill. Moment. Sun Furu was struck by lightning, and the sharp claws that had been recovering frantically stopped immediately. You lose. Chen Daoxian stopped and said, according to the agreement now, you should tell me the location of the old demon god Zhu. Jie. Sun Fu lowered his head, looked at the huge gap in his abdomen, and said with a smile, do you think my master will tell me the location? Fool, I lied to you. If I were you, I would choose to go back to Guang'an Mansion to see. Look at your family. Do you think that you are the only one who is wise in this world? What's the meaning? Sun Fu looked at him in horror. I mean, go to hell. The starlight flashed again, completely piercing Sun Fu's corpse pill. The next moment Sun Fu's body fell directly to the sea. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace was silent when he saw this scene. In fact, he knew clearly in his heart that with the cautiousness of God Zhu old demon, he would never tell him the location of the two corpse servants in the cave. But in order to completely eliminate this scorpion, he still had the thought of just in case, and the result was as expected. Senior. After killing Sun Fu, Chen Daoxian cupped his hands and said, this fellow still has a backer in Guang'an Mansion, and this junior must immediately return to help Guang'an Mansion. When everyone in Guang'an Mansion heard that Sun Meng was still in Guang'an Mansion, they felt a little worried. Although everyone knows, the zombies that Sun Fu stayed in Guang'an Mansion were at most a small number of elites, and could not be a large group of corpses, otherwise they would definitely not be able to hide the Cangzhou allied forces. But Sun Meng was a complete zombie of Zifu after all. If he said he was not worried at all, it would be a lie. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace nodded and said, go. Yes. After speaking, Chen Daoxian turned around and wanted to leave. Fellow Taoist. Behind him a female voice sounded. It was Fairy Qi Yao. The speed of the Spirit Void battleship is too slow. It is better to take my spirit boat, which is 10 times faster than the Spirit Void battleship. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian paused, then cupped his hands and said, thank you, Fairy. You don't have to be polite, fellow Taoist. Fairy Qi Yao nodded, and immediately stretched out her jade hand, and a 3-inch spirit boat appeared in her palm. Throw lightly. The spirit boat rose in the wind, and in a flash, it turned into an emerald green spirit boat that was nearly 100 feet long. Chen Daoxian was not polite, and with a flash of light, he flew to the spirit boat. Fairy Qi Yao and the female cultivator in goose yellow gauze followed closely. Next moment, the spirit boat soared into the sky and flew in the direction of Guang'an Mansion. Chapter 205. Southwest Waters of Wuxia. A spirit boat pierced through the sky, as fast as a stream of light, and flashed away in the direction of Guang'an Mansion. On the spirit boat, Chen Daoxian cupped his hands and said, thank you, Fairy, for your help. I don't know the names of the two fairies. Qi Yao has not spoken yet. The female cultivator wearing a goose yellow gauze on the side said playfully, she is my senior sister. Her name is Qi Yao, my name is Yue. What is your name, little Taoist? Don't be surprised, fellow Taoist. My junior sister has been practicing in the sect since she was a child. She is not deep in the world, and I look forward to fellow Taoist Hai Han. Qi Yao glanced at Yue, and quickly apologized to Chen Daoxian. No problem, no problem. Chen Daoxian said with a smile, how can I care about Fairy Yu's frank words? After a pause he continued, I am Chen Daoxian, a cultivator of the Chen family on Shuanghu Island in Guang'an Prefecture, and I have seen two fairies. After formally meeting the two of them, Qi Yao nodded. Fellow Taoist Chen, there is something I don't understand. Fairy, please speak. Chen Daoxian stretched out his hand. Qi Yao hesitated and said, according to what the late-stage corpse servant of Z Mansion said, the situation in Guang'an Mansion should be very critical at the moment. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian smiled. The immortal city of Guang'an Mansion is guarded by a fifth-order formation, and there are also cultivators of the Purple Mansion. There are only a few zombies in the Purple Mansion, and there is nothing they can do. As for my own family, I also have a backer at the bottom, plus there is a fourth-order defense formation to guard. I am not afraid of a few Zifu zombies. I see. Qi Yao nodded. Unfortunately, this time I tried my best, but I still couldn't completely eliminate the Xinjue old demon. If the Xinjue old demon will not be destroyed for a day, Wan Xinghai will be uneasy for a day. After speaking, he sighed again. Hear this. Chen Daoxian couldn't help feeling heavy. In the past, he had only heard the name of Shenju Zhenren in legends, but this time he had a direct face-to-face with him. Although he only briefly fought against the avatar of Shenju, the pressure on him was unprecedented. If it weren't for the golden scriptures in the Consciousness Sea and the Hall Master of Zhenhai Palace, they would take action in time. Chen Daoxian was already dead at this moment, although he escaped from the hands of Shenju Zhenren. However, since Chen Daoxian broke free from Shenju Zhenren's famous supernatural power, Dingpa Shangguang, I am afraid that Shenju Zhenren has long been missed. It is not a good thing to be missed by such a sinister, cunning and powerful person. The fact that Shenju Ren is not eliminated in a day is also a huge threat to him. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help sinking into his own sea of consciousness. Know the sea. After the golden scripture devoured the soul-defying divine light released by Shenju Zhenren, there was a wonderful change. However, Chen Daoxian has been too late to check this change. Friend Chen. Seeing Chen Daoxian distracted, Fairy Qiyao frowned and called softly. Chen Daoxian came back to his senses and cupped his hands. Fairy, don't blame me. I seem to have thought of a way to get rid of the old demon god Jueju completely. Any solution? Fairy Qiyao's eyes suddenly lit up, and she didn't care that Chen Daoxian was distracted just now. My way is simple. Listening to Chen Daoxian's strategy, Fairy Qiyao's beautiful eyes became brighter and brighter. But will the old demon Shenju be fooled? Maybe, maybe not, just bet once. Chen Daoxian's eyes were solemn. This time the old demon Shenju lost his immortal avatar, and at the same time lost the ability to mass-produce the corpse servants of Zifu. Therefore, for the current Shenju old demon, the corpse servant in the late period of Zifu is not a dispensable role, and it is entirely possible for him to take this risk. Okay. Fairy Qiyao nodded. Then let's give it a try. Guang'an Prefecture. Twin Lakes Island. The Fourth Order defense formation that covers the entire island has long been opened. Outside the transparent light curtain constructed by the Fourth Order defense formation, Sun Mang brought 3 corpses of the early purple mansion and shouted outside the formation, "Are all of you Chun family cultivators a bunch of cowards? Don't hide if you have the ability. Come out and fight me." Boom! With that said, Sun Mang slammed a punch on the light curtain of the Fourth Order defense formation. But it poses no threat to the light curtain. If 10 late-stage Zifu corpses can still cause damage to the Fourth Order defense formation, just 1 late-stage Zifu plus 3 early-stage Zifu corpses cannot pose any threat to the Fourth Order defense formation. This was also the reason why Sun Mang was so angry. He didn't expect that a small family in Guang'an Prefecture, which was not well known, could actually set up a Fourth Order defensive formation. To know, if you want to arrange a Fourth Order defense formation, it means that there must be at least a Third Order spiritual vein on the island in front of you. Otherwise, it will not be able to support the operation of the Fourth Order defense formation. Inside the Fourth Order defense formation, Chan Xianhe took a group of monks of the Blessing Generation and looked at Sun Mang, who was desperate outside the formation, and his face was ugly. This was the first time that the Chun family had been blocked by someone, and they did not dare to fight. In addition to the Chun family, a sturdy merman and a petite female merman stood in the air, standing beside everyone. Luo Xuan glanced at Chan Xianhe, who had an ugly face, and the group of monks who were gnashing their teeth and wishing to tear Sun Mang apart, and said in a deep voice, "Why don't I go out and meet him?" Heard. Chan Xianhe looked at Luo Xuan and shook his head. "Patriarch Luo doesn't have to be like this. We only have 1 of your Zifu battle strength, and the other side has 4. It's too dangerous." Out of defense. The more Sun Mang scolded, the more unpleasant it sounded, and took the cultivators from other islands in the west defense area of Guang'an Mansion, killing them one by one in order to stimulate the cultivators of the Chan family. These bastards! Chun Fuxing tightened the flying sword in his hand, his eyes red. Although he is a sword cultivator, he only has the 9th level of Qi refining. Now rush out. In addition to courting death, there is no second possibility. Let's go, don't look. Chan Xianhe waved his hand. But the old patriarch, those monks. Hearing this, Chan Xianhe glanced at the cultivator who was screaming outside the defense formation, and closed his eyes in pain and said, "In the end, It's their fault. My Chun family persuaded them to move out of the clan and go to Guanhai. Xiancheng, since they are unwilling, they should pay for this decision today. Having said that, but seeing the cultivators die tragically in front of him, Chan Xianhe was still trembling with anger. Go! Chan Xianhe was ruthless, and immediately prepared to fly away, no longer looking at the tragic situation in front of him. The mermen, headed by Luo Shiyuan and Luo Li, did not have much psychological change when they saw the scene in front of them. Compared with the racial slaughter in the underwater world, the blood in front of him is not even a family. That is to say, the monks of the Fuzi generation who have not been deeply involved in the world and have not been baptized by war are a little frightened. And Chan Xianhe, a cultivator who has been on the battlefield of Izumo, is at most angry and not afraid. But watch carefully. There are still some differences among the cultivators of the Chan family. There is a group of monks of the Blessing generation who are particularly calm. It seems that the tragic situation that occurs outside the defense formation is commonplace, and there is no fear other than anger. There are not many monks in this batch of Blessing characters, but they are obviously different from other monks in the Blessing generation. A cheer-refining cultivator's neck was twisted a little by Sun Mang, and finally he pulled it out sharply, pulling his spine out of the cultivator's body. Immediately blood spurted out. Sun Mang held the corpse in one hand and the head connected to the spine in the other. He licked the blood spattered on the corner of his mouth. His pale golden pupils were full of bloodthirsty and cruelty. These cultivators of the Chun family can really bear it. Sun Mang murmured, "Brother, I don't know if things are going well on your side." For some reason, the unhappiness of this trip made Sun Mang's heart full of haze, and he had a bad premonition. Chin's dog. As if feeling something, Sun Mang just turned around and saw a starlight transformed by a flying sword hitting its body, directly smashing his body onto the light curtain of the Fourth Order defense formation, and then bounced fiercely open. Under such a violent attack, the corpse in his hand also fell directly into the sea, dyeing the sea red. Qian. Dao. Xian. Sun Mang clutched his wounded chest, black air gushing out from the wound, frantically repairing its wounded body. In a blink, the gap in the chest was repaired as before. So close. Although Sun Mang's face was full of anger, he was shocked. If he hadn't evaded in time just now, it was only a short while before that the starlight transformed by the flying sword would have penetrated his dantian and damaged his corpse pill. For zombies, the corpse is a more critical location than the head. When it reaches the late stage of Zifu, the head of the zombie is destroyed, and the recovery is not much different from the body, but if the corpse pill is damaged, the zombie will lose the ability to restore the body and lose the source of strength. This is also the reason why Sun Fu and Chen Daoxian fought so hard to protect the position of Dantian. For monks who cannot break their defenses, Dantian position is naturally not a weakness. But for Chen Daoxian who can break their defenses, the Dantian position is the biggest weakness of zombies. Therefore, every time he attacked, he was also directed at Sun Mang's dantian. In the face of Sun Mang's clamor, Chen Daoxian ignored it. After the battle with Sun Fu, he already had a clearer judgment on his own strength. In terms of group attacks on low-level cultivators, he is probably more deterrent than Jindan cultivators. In terms of one-on-one, his strength is only 1 point stronger than the zombies in the late Zifu. If it is placed in the cultivator, it is probably slightly stronger than the ordinary middle-stage cultivator of Zifu, but it should be no better than the ordinary late-stage cultivator of Zifu. Inside the defensive formation, just as Chan Xianhe was about to fly away, he heard the exclamations of everyone. He turned his head and saw a scene that surprised him. Outside the formation, a familiar figure was beating Sun Mang. The person in front of him is not Chen Daoxian, and who is he? Young Patriarch. It's the Young Patriarch. It's the Young Patriarch. It's really the Young Patriarch. Great. Inside the formation, the cultivator Chun Jiafu and the cultivator Dao were all rejoicing and excited. For the Chun family cultivators, Chen Daoxian is the source of their confidence and confidence. This kind of prestige is something that no cultivator of any family or sect has ever had. The Chun family cultivator is no longer simply in awe of Chen Daoxian, but has a taste of fanatical worship. This point, Whether it is a monk of the Taoist generation or a monk of the blessing generation, they are all the same. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Chen Xianhe stopped immediately. He knew that Sun Meng was dead. It is obvious that Chen Daoxuan's cultivation base is only at the foundation stage, but he believes that Chen Daoxian can definitely solve this opponent. Seeing this scene, Luo Xuan immediately stepped forward and flew out of the formation, outside the defensive array. Except for Chen Daoxian, who was beating Sun Meng violently, the remaining 3 zombies in the early stage of Zifu were directly killed by Fairy Qi Yao with one sword. After killing 3 zombies in the early stage of Zifu, Qi Yao and Yue stood in the void, lining up for Chen Daoxian. Luo Shuyuan flew out of the battle and was embarrassed to find that he had no opponents. He wanted to help Chen Daoxian, but Chen Daoxian didn't seem to want him to help, which made him feel at a loss. Luo Xuan looked at Chen Daoxian, who was constantly suppressing Sun Meng in the distance, and a huge wave was set off in his heart. How long has it been? He still remembered that when he met Chen Daoxian more than 10 years ago, he could crush him with one finger. But more than 10 years later, he no longer has any confidence that he can win against the opponent. This rate of progress, Luo Xuan only felt a chill behind him, but then there was another burst of happiness. He was fortunate that when he first met Chen Daoxian, he did not choose to oppress him rudely, and he was even more fortunate that he decisively became a vassal of the Chen family before the rise of the Chen family. In addition, this time he has done a good job in protecting Shuanghu Island. No matter what, the future of the Mer people will be extremely bright. After all, Wan Xinghai is the Wan Xinghai of the human race. If you want to survive in the Wangxinghai, whether it is a merman or other aliens, you must learn to find a human backer. Obviously, for the merman, the Chen family is a good human backer. The mermaid. Watching the fight, a soft voice sounded in Luo Zhaoyuan's ear. It was Qi Yao. Although she couldn't recognize the female cultivator in front of her, her strength was obviously much more terrifying than Chen Daoxian. This can be seen from the fact that the opponent killed 3 corpse servants in the early period of Zifu with one sword. She is also a swordsman, a sword cultivator with a complete cultivation base in Zifu. Luo Shuyuan doubted whether he could block the opponent's sword. Therefore, Luo Shuyuan hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Fairy has good eyesight, and it is the subordinate race of the Chen family," the Mer people heard. Qi Yao nodded. "I have read from the ancient books in the sect that there was a branch of the ancient human race that escaped to the underwater world, and later evolved into many races, and your Mer people seem to be one of them." Luo Shuyuan nodded. "What the fairy said is good." Hearing the word Zhongniai, Luo Shuyuan was shocked. The other party is from the Qianyuan sword sect. Immediately his attitude became more humble. A disciple of Qianyuan sword sect, and also a sword cultivator, this must be a direct disciple of Qianyuan sword sect. The future of this kind of person is difficult to estimate. As long as he does not fall, he will basically become the top of the Qianyuan sword sect in the future. Unexpectedly, now the Lord can actually get involved with such a character. Luo Shuyuan secretly said, "Senior sister, he is going to win." Yu on the side smiled. Hurt. Qi Yao turned her head and looked at the battlefield where Chen Daoxian and Sun Meng were fighting. "Impossible. Impossible. It's only been a few years. How can you become so strong? I don't believe it, I don't believe it." Sun Meng looked like a madman. His fangs were exposed, and the corpse aura filled the air, which was disgusting. The starlight kept falling, tearing up Sun Meng's recovering body bit by bit. In the end, Sun Meng's corpse pill was hit by Chen Daoxuan's flying sword. Sun Meng's eyes bulged and his body was completely stiff. Ho dash. He lowered his head and glanced at the flying sword that pierced his dantian, then raised his head with difficulty and looked at Chen Daoxian. Not finished. Chen Daoxian pulled out the flying sword, and Sun Meng's body fell directly to the sea, sinking toward the bottom of the sea. After Sun Meng was dealt with, Chen Daoxian took back his flying sword and flew towards the crowd with a flash of light. "Friend Chen, how is it?" A gentle voice sounded in Chen Daoxuan's sea of consciousness. It was Fairy Qi Yao's voice. Chen Daoxian looked at her and nodded slightly to her. "You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.